Chapter 709. Seeing that the legion of holy angels had left the Noah continent, the burning legion became even more unscrupulous. One believer after another struggled and fell into a pool of blood. Even before they died, they still believed that the great, noble, and omnipotent God would bless them. The powerhouses of the Holy See wanted to escape, but they couldn't escape from the demons who were many times stronger than them. They could only be killed by them with endless fear and resentment. The most terrifying thing was that the ferocious demons didn't kill them all at once. Instead, they tortured them in different ways. When these powerhouses of the sacred domain breathed their last, their faces were filled with happy smiles. The Holy See, which had occupied the continent for 100,000 years, finally disappeared from this world. Its destruction represented the complete end of the legion of holy angels' power in the Noah continent. Mount Hygel, 300 meters underground, in a spacious hall. In the heavily guarded Mount Hygel, especially in the godly palaces, every intersection, hall, and room was guarded by the members of the Holy Knight Order who were wearing white clothes and white armor. However, due to the destruction of the Holy Church, the place was empty. However, in this mysterious and hidden hall, some things were quietly changing. A huge magic array was still operating, and what was sealed by this huge magic array was a headless corpse. The headless corpse of the god. The headless corpse of the god that Ron had refined into a zombie puppet was here. It had been defeated by Pope, captured and sealed here. At this moment, it was motionless, like a machine that had lost its power. Guangming's power projected from the ceiling directly onto the headless corpse, forming a circular shadow of light around it. The vast power of Guangming suppressed all heretical and evil forces. This huge Guangming magic array sealed the headless corpse's movements and cut off its senses from the outside world. Therefore, after Ron had lost the headless god corpse, even after he had advanced to the god realm, he had been unable to sense the headless god corpse's location. It was as if it had disappeared without a trace. He had never thought that it would actually be here. However, today, Guangming's strength showed signs of weakening, and the muscles of the headless corpse began to twitch. In the past, the Holy Knights would have taken turns to inject Guangming's power into the magic circle. But now, no one cared about that. The headless corpse's muscles twitched more and more violently. Then, a faintly discernible power was released. This power was filled with a berserk and murderous aura, as well as a madness that could destroy everything. It was the destructive power of hell. Just like the burning legion, the destructive power grew stronger and stronger, gradually filling the room and clashing fiercely with Guangming's power. Perhaps sensing the anomaly, the magic array glowed brightly, and Guangming's power increased several-fold. The power of destruction was not to be outdone. Guangming and destruction intertwined, forming a strange scene. Due to the lack of light energy from the Holy Knight Regiment's powerhouses, the magic array was unable to resist the power of the headless corpse. Gradually, the white light emitted by the array became weaker and weaker, while the black energy grew stronger and stronger. At this time, the headless corpse's finger moved slightly. Mount Hygel, which was covered in snow all year round, had turned into a sea of blood. Burning flames soared into the sky, melting the snow that had accumulated for hundreds of thousands of years. Thick smoke rose into the air. 3-headed hounds the size of calves were devouring the corpses. After digesting the corpses, they would become part of their power. In the Oracle Hall, bang! The frail dark magician Longinu was thrown to the ground by the Cthulhu King Ravens. He was in a sorry state at the moment, and his white beard that kept shaking was covered in snow. Longinu looked up and happened to meet Princess Sophia's majestic gaze. He was so scared that he immediately shrank his head back. Sophia's beautiful and slender legs were crossed, sitting on the throne that Pope and Ernst usually sat on. Her beautiful face was frosty, and her yellow eyes were emotionless like a poisonous snake's. Sophia raised her head slightly. Mr. Longinu, I've already attacked Mount Hygel according to your request, but my people have turned the whole mountain upside down and even dug 3 feet into the ground, but they still haven't found my father's body." Sophia's eyebrows gradually rose, and a trace of anger appeared in her eyes. "I hope you can give me an explanation. This. Hearing this, Long Inu stuttered. He knew that this day would come sooner or later. Lies would always be exposed by the truth. It's like this, Princess Sophia," Long Inu said nervously. Maybe. I sensed wrongly. The location of Sir Sauron's body should be in the Undercity at the southern end of the Noah continent. Long Inu was indeed the most cunning dark magician. He rolled his eyes and said the words that he had thought of long ago. He already knew that the Burning Legion had suffered a setback in the Undercity. Sophia frowned and gave Ravens a look. Ravens understood. He grinned, stretched out his fan-like hand, and grabbed the thin and weak Long Inu as if he was grabbing a chicken. He pinched Longinu's right shoulder and twisted it hard. With a crack, Long Inu screamed like a pig being slaughtered. The Cthulhu King Raven's face didn't even twitch. He grabbed Longinu's leg and twisted it off. Then, he threw Long Inu, who was like a dead chicken, to the ground. With his leg broken one by one, Long Inu was in so much pain that he couldn't even scream. He opened his mouth wide and desperately breathed in fresh air like a dying fish. At this moment, his heart was filled with extreme fear. "How does it feel, Mr. Long Inu?" Princess Sophia's face was expressionless. She looked coldly at Long Inu, who was lying on the ground. "Don't think that I don't know that you're playing with me, but I've said before, those who deceive me will have to pay the price sooner or later." Seeing that his lie was exposed, Longinu's face showed extreme despair. He shouted with a hoarse voice, Your Highness, don't kill me. So, you've been deceiving me." Sophia's eyebrows finally rose. Her eyes turned red and were filled with cold, murderous intent. "Good, very good." Princess Sophia was so angry that she laughed. "Mr. Long Inu, not only did you deceive me, you also deceived Sir Sauron. You sent a large number of the Burning Legion's troops to this godforsaken continent of Noah. In the end, you got nothing. Very good, come, kill him, then chop him up and feed the 3-headed hounds at the door." After knowing the truth, Sophia was so angry that she gritted her teeth. "Yes." Evil God Ravens nodded and looked at Long Inu with a cold smile. Although the princess wanted to kill him, how to kill him and when to kill him was something that needed to be paid attention to. Ravens didn't mind letting this damn guy enjoy himself before he died. Just as Long Inu was being dragged up by the 2 demon guards like a dead pig, suddenly there was a boom sound. The whole hall shook, and countless dust and gravel fell down. "What's that sound?" Sophia was stunned and then looked at Ravens with an inquiring gaze. Ravens frowned. "I don't know. I didn't order any attack." Sophia's face sank. "Look." "Yes." Ravens responded and immediately walked out. At this time, he didn't notice the surprised and happy expression on Longinu's face. It's Sir Sauron. This is Sir Sauron's power." Long Inu endured the piercing pain in his body, his lips trembled, and his face was full of excitement. "What?" Sophia and Ravens were shocked. Long Inu didn't know where he got the strength from, but he suddenly broke free from the demon guard's restraint and knelt in front of Sophia. "Princess Sophia, please believe me. This time it's really Sir Sauron, it's really Sir Sauron's aura." Sophia and Ravens looked at each other, took a deep breath and said coldly, "If I find out that you're lying this time, you'll be in trouble." Then she said to Ravens, "Remember his name first. Let's take a look first." "Yes, Your Highness." Mount Hyjal, which was covered with snow all year round, was now snowing heavily. There was a scene of white light between heaven and earth. In the sky above the mountainside of Mount Hyjal, an imposing figure suddenly appeared. This figure held its legs and floated quietly in the air. This body had no head. It was the headless corpse that escaped from Guangming's magic array. It unscrupulously released a powerful destructive force, like a black sun in the air. "Father!" As soon as she saw the headless corpse, Princess Sophia stood up from the demon chariot. She took 2 steps forward, and 2 lines of clear tears slowly flowed from her beautiful cheek. "It's Sir Sauron." "Yes, it's really Sir Sauron's aura." "No way, how can Sir Sauron's aura be so weak?" "Nonsense, don't you know that Sir Sauron is dead? He's just a corpse now. It's already good that he has such strength." Upon seeing the headless corpse, the demons of the Burning Legion began to discuss among themselves. Even though some of the demons' gazes were filled with suspicion, in front of the headless corpse, the unruly demons revealed looks of respect on their faces. No one would have thought that the real identity of the headless corpse was the commander of the Hell-Burning Legion, Sauron, who was known as the King of Hell. He was the brother of the current commander, Thor, and the real purpose of the Burning Legion coming to the small Noah continent. If the dead Pope Ernst knew this, he would be so angry that he fainted again. At that time, he was just curious about Ron's headless but abnormally powerful corpse. He even wanted to control it for his own use, but he did not expect to attract such a disaster. It was because of this action that the Holy See was destroyed. Only then did Longinus breathe a sigh of relief. He knew that at least his life was saved. "Your Highness Princess Sophia." Ravens walked to Sophia and bowed. "What do we do now?" After the excitement, Sophia's face returned to a cold expression. "Bring him down first." Chapter 7:10. Mr. Longinus, what do you think we should do now? In a dimly lit room, the tall and majestic King of Hell, Ravens, the King of Cthulhu, bowed and politely said to the wretched-looking dark magician Longinus. After successfully finding the corpse of the Burning Legion's commander, the Lord of Hell, Sauron, Longinus had made a great contribution. Sophia and Raven's attitude toward Longinus had undergone a 180-degree change, turning from arrogance to respect. At this moment the headless corpse, the former head of the Burning Legion, Soren, was lying quietly on a huge magic circle. It was no longer the Guangming magic circle that sealed him, but the great black magician, Mr. Longinus, who had the strength of a mage god. The dark power in the black magic circle was repairing Soren's broken body bit by bit. Soren's head had been taken out and placed on his body. The muscles that had been completely cut open had already healed. At this moment, he looked like a normal person, breathing gently. He was no longer a corpse, he had come back to life. Although the King of Hell, Soren, had been resurrected, his eyes were still closed and he looked unconscious. Longinus nodded softly. He gently pinched the snow-white goatee on his chin with one hand, but his eyes glanced at Sophia, who had a cold expression on her face. Sophia looked at the guy's disgusting face and wanted to punch him. She knew that this old guy had been holding a grudge against her. But Sophia also understood that whether her father could be truly resurrected depended on this wretched little black magician. Although this old guy was extravagant and wretched, he was unparalleled in the realm of dark magic in the whole hell. Sophia had to suppress her anger, barely squeezed out a smile, and said softly, "Mr. Longinus, please guide me. I believe that the great dark magic will not disappoint me. I don't know what's going on with my father now?" Princess Sophia asked with a smile. After making the proud Princess Sophia lower her noble head, Longinus smiled with satisfaction. The muscles on his wretched face squeezed together, looking like twisted flour. Longinus lowered his head and pretended to touch Soren's body, pinching it gently. I'm afraid it will be a little troublesome." "What kind of trouble?" Princess Sophia immediately asked anxiously. "Well," Longinus deliberately dragged his voice, but he didn't say the answer for a long time. Sophia finally lost her cool. She snorted coldly, and her cold expression returned to her face. "Mr. Longinus, if you don't have the ability, you'd better not waste my time, otherwise," when Sophia said the word, "or else," she purposely emphasized the word, "or else." Longinus shuddered. Only then did he remember that Princess Sophia, who looked unusually amiable, was actually a demon, a ferocious demon. He had to be careful when dealing with demons. Longinu immediately calmed down and didn't dare to look at Sophia's murderous eyes. He observed carefully. The wound healed very quickly. It seems that there are no traces. Lord Soren has been unconscious until now, mainly because his soul has been sealed, Longinu said. His soul has been sealed? Sophia's heart tightened. If I bring him back to hell, can he be resurrected in the Temple of Evil? The Temple of Evil was the most mysterious and sacred place in hell. It was mysterious because few people knew of its existence. It was sacred because this building had a heaven-defying function, which was resurrection. When powerful hell creatures died in battle, they could use the Temple of Evil to resurrect again. Of course, not every hell creature could get this honor, only some powerful hell creatures. Soren was the head of the Burning Legion, so he naturally had this qualification. After listening to Sophia's words, Longinu didn't comment. He shook his head gently and said 2 words. No. Why? Sophia's heart sank. The little hope in her heart was extinguished instantly like a candle flame. Because Lord Soren's soul has been sealed. The person who sealed him is very powerful. He used a very powerful force to seal his soul in his body. If this seal is not broken, Lord Soren will never wake up. Longinu said slowly. Your Highness, you also know that the body of a person who can be resurrected in the Temple of Evil is not important. The important thing is the soul. No matter how much damage is done to the body, as long as the soul is still there, he can be resurrected, Longinu sighed. It's a pity that Lord Soren has no soul. Even if his head and body are completely healed and he looks like a normal person, without a soul, he can only be a walking corpse forever. Hermes. When Sophia heard this, her face showed an extremely resentful expression. She clenched her teeth and said the name that she had hated for 100,000 years. The person who sealed the soul of Soren, the king of hell, in his body was none other than the Lich King Hermes. This was a punishment for him for overestimating himself. Sophia took a deep breath as she calmed herself down. She then looked at Longinu and said pleasantly, Mr. Longinu, I'm sure you'll find a way. There is indeed a way. At this time, Longinu didn't beat around the bush. He directly stretched out a finger and said, 10 million. What? Sophia was stunned for a moment and immediately recovered. Mr. Longinu, you mean you want 10 million black crystal coins as a reward? No, Longinu shook his head. We'll talk about the reward later. I want 10 million living creatures. 10 million living creatures, humans, elves, orcs, demonic beasts, anything will do. Living creatures. When Sophia heard this, she was surprised and happy. So it's not black crystal coins, but those worthless living creatures. That's easy to deal with. The Burning Legion had conquered countless planes, destroyed countless cities, and killed hundreds of millions of living creatures. 10 million living creatures was too easy. Not to mention other things, just the Noah continent alone could make up this number. Thinking of this, Princess Sophia couldn't help but regret that she killed too ruthlessly in the Noah continent. She didn't know if there were still so many living creatures in the Noah continent. Sophia looked at Ravens on the side. Ravens pondered for a moment and asked, What does Mr. Longinu want to do with these 10 million living creatures? Souls. I want their souls. Longinu changed his usual greedy and wretched appearance. He licked his lips with a fanatical look in his eyes. Ha ha ha! My greatest magic circle, the pinnacle of dark magic, the heart of darkness can appear in my heart. Chapter 711. Quebec City, which was close to the Roland Empire, was in ruins. Broken walls, collapsed houses, and charred corpses could be seen everywhere. The sky above Quebec City was filled with clouds of black smoke. The black smoke came from the center of Quebec City. On the streets, the entire city was shrouded in darkness. Once upon a time, Yaya Street had turned into a scene from hell. Countless captured humans, elves, orcs, and magic beasts were brought here. They were lined up in a long line. Their expressions were wooden, and their yellow and emaciated faces seemed to have lost their vitality. They walked forward numbly, all the way to the makeshift platform. On the platform, there were evil gods holding sharp knives. Around them, there were countless imps holding spears and swords. Their sharp and ferocious gazes swept across the captured creatures. Poochie! A sound was heard. On the platform, an evil god held a long knife and stabbed it into an orc's chest. The orc's hairy chest immediately bled and flowed down his stomach. The orc didn't struggle. His body twisted a few times, and his face showed pain and despair. He looked like a chicken waiting to be slaughtered. The evil god's face was expressionless. He pulled the injured beastman over and kicked him off the high platform. The orc's body quickly fell heavily to the ground with a thud. He struggled a few times and stopped moving. His wide-open eyes revealed his longing for life. At the foot of the high platform, countless corpses were piled up into a small hill. The blood flowing out of these corpses converged into small rivers. Countless small rivers were like spider webs, meandering and slowly flowing to a place on the ground, bit by bit to the center. Converging. Quebec City at the moment. The streets had turned into a huge dark magic circle. In the center of this magic circle lay a corpse. The great dark mage Longinu stood beside the corpse with his staff raised high. He was chanting in a language that no one could understand. Traces of a strange dark aura filled the city. This was the dark magic Heart of Darkness. 10 million creatures were sacrificed in exchange for Lord Sauron, the leader of the Burning Legion. The temporarily built platforms were slaughterhouses. Creatures were slaughtered here, and then their blood and souls would be turned into dark power to repair the incomplete soul of Sauron. Not far away, Demon Princess Sophia sat on a huge open-air throne. She looked at all of this quietly with a trace of hope in her eyes. "Do you think, is Longinu trustworthy? Will my father really be revived?" Standing beside her was her most trusted subordinate, Cthulhu King Ravens. Ravens hesitated. "I don't know much about dark magic, but seeing how that guy is so serious, it shouldn't be fake." Black magic was no less mysterious than necromancy magic. In fact, to a certain extent, they could achieve the same result through different means. Sophia looked at the long queue and could not help but frown. She sighed softly. "It's a pity. This speed is too slow. I can't wait." "This is already the fastest," Ravens answered honestly. 10 million creatures, killing 100,000 every day. "At this speed, it will take 3 months, Sophia grunted. Although she was helpless, she could only accept this fact. "But it's too boring." Sophia stretched lazily and leaned against the chair lazily. She narrowed her eyes slightly and turned a blind eye to the wails of those living beings. To her, those 10 million living beings were just a number. Ravens took a step back and stood solemnly at the side. At this moment, there was a commotion not far away, accompanied by the roars of beasts. At the same time, there was a commotion. "What's going on?" Sophia opened her eyes. Her emotionless eyes were filled with anger as she looked at Ravens. "I'll go investigate immediately." Ravens knew the princess' temper and immediately gave the order. Not long after, a demon guard stumbled over. "It's like this, Your Highness. There was a small accident just now. We didn't expect a magical beast from the sacred domain to be hiding in the crowd. It suddenly attacked and injured many of our people," the demon guard reported carefully. It turned out that the one resisting in Quebec City was a high-ranked magical beast from the sacred domain, the enraged lion. He was captured by the Burning Legion as a human and sent here. He had been hiding his identity and was waiting for an opportunity to escape. However, after arriving here, he felt that something was amiss and finally rebelled. The power of a high-level saint-level magical beast was not to be underestimated. Once he was enraged, He killed the imps guarding him and even bit dozens of Cerberus to death. He was having a great time fighting the evil god who had rushed over. The battle between the two powerhouses from the sacred domain caused great chaos and destruction. Some creatures took the opportunity to escape. A magical beast from the sacred domain? Sophia's face was filled with anger. She suddenly stood up and roared as she slammed the chair. Rice buckets. You guys are all rice buckets. A mere magical beast from the sacred domain can cause such a big mess. Go. Deal with it immediately. If you disturb Mr. Longinu and delay my father's resurrection, none of you will live. Yes. The Cthulhu King Ravens felt a chill in his heart. I'll deal with it immediately. The top of Quebec City was already covered in blood. There were traces of a fierce battle everywhere. It was as if dozens of beasts had fought here. Dozens of incomplete corpses were lying on the ground. A huge, snow-white lion weighing several tons paced back and forth, roaring angrily. At this moment, the enraged lion had already turned into a blood lion. His white fur was already stained with blood. Even though his strength was one level lower than his, he was still injured by the dozens of ferocious hellish creatures. He even fought with the sanctuary-level hellish creatures that rushed over. The enraged lion's fierceness was well known in the kingdom of magical beasts. The evil god who rushed over had already been defeated by him. However, he could not escape. Dozens of hell creatures had already surrounded him, but the power of the magical beast from the sacred domain made them not dare to move forward. At this time, the entire northern part of Quebec City was in chaos. There were shouts and chaotic footsteps everywhere. In order to maintain order, the hell creatures began a frenzied slaughter. Damn it! It'll be too late if I don't leave now. Sensing that there might be more and more powerhouses rushing over, the enraged lion was anxious. He did not care about the injuries on his body and rushed towards the group of little demons. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Under his sharp claws, several little demons were torn to pieces. Kill! Don't let him escape! Squeak! The little demons let out a unique squeak and rushed forward like a tide. Their terrifying numbers were like bats flying in the sky. Those hell creatures were as short as pygmies, but they were powerful and ferocious. Boom! 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 The powerful fire domain spread out, and there were fierce explosions on the city wall. The hair on the enraged lion's body stood up, just like his name. The enraged lion, a magical beast from the sacred domain, used his sharp claws and teeth to kill many hell creatures. He rushed down the city wall and killed his way out. Where do you think you're going? At this time, a thunderous voice sounded in the enraged lion's ears. The enraged lion's heart suddenly tightened, and then his hair stood on end. The shadow of death instantly shrouded the entire space. That was a God-realm powerhouse. As a peak magical beast from the sacred domain, the young enraged lion had always been very conceited about his strength. He believed that he would become a peak magical beast like R.A. Firth and Frigga in the near future. But the moment he faced a God-realm powerhouse, he realized how insignificant his strength was. A God-realm powerhouse was too strong. Even if he was at the peak of the sacred domain, he couldn't take half a move from a low-level God-realm powerhouse. The enraged lion ran, and at the same time, he prayed in his heart. That's water. The moat of Quebec City was connected to the waterway outside. The enraged lion had been secretly observing the situation when he came in. When he saw the moat, his heart was immediately filled with joy. The enraged lion knew that as long as he escaped into the water, he would be safe. The enraged lion quickened his pace. 1 step, 2 steps, but the distance from the moat, which was only a dozen meters, seemed so slow in the enraged lion's eyes. Bang! A huge black ball of light crossed the void, leaving a long mark on the heads of the hundreds of thousands of creatures in Quebec City. The ball of destruction was like a giant tadpole as it swam towards the top of the city walls of Quebec. Its target was none other than the sanctuary-level magical beast that had escaped. Bastard! The ball of destruction hadn't arrived yet, but the blazing temperature had already scorched the earth. The enraged lion felt the fur on his back was already burnt. He cried out in pain, his heart already filled with despair. Boom! The huge black ball of light suddenly came down, and an earth-shattering explosion erupted. The God realm-level destructive power tore through the void, spreading in all directions, shaking the entire Quebec City. After a long time, a huge mark appeared in the moat of Quebec City. The river water flowed backward, and the river changed its course. The magical beasts from the sacred domain had long disappeared. The chaos calmed down. After witnessing the terror of the Cthulhu King Ravens, no creature dared to have the slightest bit of resistance. They were like chickens waiting to be slaughtered, losing the strength and courage to resist. The chaos calmed down, and the ceremony continued, as if it was an insignificant interlude. Lowly creatures, offer your blood and soul, contribute your strength, to the resurrection of Lord Sauron. At this time, Longinus raised his hands high and shouted loudly. Powerful and fierce dark energy surged into the sky. The center of the magic formation began to operate wildly. Blood gathered from all directions, forming a huge pool of blood. The pool of blood was already half full. Sauron's corpse floated quietly in the pool of blood. Above the pool of blood, there were souls constantly flying and roaring. These souls had expressions of pain, anger, and unwillingness, letting out desperate cries. The dark ceremony had begun. Chapter 7:12. You're saying that the Burning Legion is now going around capturing humans? In a dark room, Ron, who was wearing a black robe and a white bone pauldron, asked with a cold expression. Vivian was standing in front of him. Yes, young master. Vivian raised her pretty face, her expression frosty. According to the undead assassins under my command, apart from capturing humans, they've also captured many orcs, elves, and other races. That's strange. Isn't the Burning Legion bloodthirsty? As long as you encounter them, you'll definitely die. But why did they suddenly change their attitude and turn into capturing humans? Ron seemed to be deep in thought. Vivian shook her head. We don't know what they're going to do, but I'm sure that the captured humans might not have a good ending. Perhaps they're carrying out some sinister plot. Sinister plot? Ron lowered his head, the light in his eyes flickering. The Burning Legion had easily conquered Mount Hyjal, but Ron wasn't too surprised. What surprised him was that they didn't encounter any decent resistance, and the Son of God, Andrew, had mysteriously disappeared. All of this was too strange. The Holy See, which had been fighting the Scourge Church for 100,000 years, had been completely destroyed, but Ron couldn't feel happy. Although the wolf in the Holy See had died, a ferocious tiger had now appeared. Facing the even more powerful Burning Legion, Ron felt a heavy pressure. Could it be that there's some kind of deal between them? Ron's eyes flashed as he thought of a possibility. This could be a deal between the main planes. One side was the Legion of Holy Angels from the main plane of order, and the other side was the Burning Legion from Hell. No one could clearly explain the entanglement between them. Then, he shook his head. If that was the case, then it was too inconceivable. They belonged to different camps. At this moment, Ron knew that he knew too little about the main plane. It was pitifully little. Young master, what should we do now? Seeing that Ron didn't speak for a long time, Vivian took the initiative to ask. It's simple. Ron slowly raised his head, his eyes flashing with determination. He took a deep breath and spat out 2 words that shocked Vivian. What? Vivian was stunned. It was as if she had heard the most unbelievable thing in the world. She couldn't believe her ears. What? Young master, you mean counterattack? Vivian took a step forward and looked at Ron in disbelief. Due to her nervousness, she couldn't even speak properly. Yes, counterattack. Ron's expression was surprisingly calm. He slowly stood up and walked down the stairs step by step. His long black robe swayed gently, but the look in his eyes was incomparably firm. "It's time for those damned invaders to pay the price." Vivian's first thought was that Ron was crazy. How strong was the Burning Legion? How powerful was the Scourge Church? They couldn't even wait to hide, so why would they take the initiative to provoke them? One had to know that the two were not on the same level. This matter was as laughable as a soldier with crude weapons and equipment charging towards an entire legion. "Young master, you've already decided?" Vivian looked at Ron's back and said loudly. Ron stood still, turned around, and nodded slowly. He said loudly, "That's right, I've already decided. In a few days, I'll gather the undead army and launch a counterattack on the stronghold occupied by the Burning Legion." "Young master." Vivian took a step forward. She bit her lips and said in a heavier tone, "This matter is very important. I hope you can consider it, or discuss it with the Great Elder." "No need." Ron frowned, and a trace of dissatisfaction flashed in his eyes. "I can decide on this matter myself." After saying that, he ignored Vivian, pushed open the door, and strode out. Sigh. Looking at Ron's back, Vivian sighed helplessly. She did not know why Ron would suddenly make such a foolish decision. In her opinion, this was simply courting death. The strength of the Burning Legion had already been proven in the Noah continent. Any provocation from other forces would definitely be destroyed. Vivian's idea was to use this victory as a backing to force the Burning Legion to make certain concessions. It would be best if they could sign a non-aggression agreement like the Holy See. She was even considering the candidates for the emissaries sent to the Burning Legion. However, all of this was mercilessly shattered by Ron's decision to counterattack. However, Ron had a different idea. Compared to Vivian, he knew more about the main plane. He knew that even if he did not launch an attack, the end result would be destruction. Those higher races from the main plane would not care about the life and death of a lower race from a secondary plane, let alone sign a peace agreement. Moreover, hiding in Undercity and guessing was not a solution. Only by taking the initiative to attack could they find out the Burning Legion's true intentions and what they wanted to do. The next day, news of the Scourge Church launching a counterattack spread through the streets and alleys of Undercity. "What? The Scourge Church is launching a counterattack against the Burning Legion? Destroying the Burning Legion? Heavens! That's impossible, right? The Burning Legion is so powerful. It's said that Ron will personally lead the army to battle. Now there's hope for the Noah continent." Everyone, including the Beastmen and other races who had fled to Undercity, thought that Ron had gone mad when they heard this. Only a madman would do such a crazy thing. Only the believers of the Scourge Church stood firmly on Ron's side. They knew that the great young master Ron's decision would not be wrong. 3 hours after Ron's official order was issued, the entire Undercity began to move. They did not even have time to clean up the broken corpses and traces in Undercity, nor did they have time to repair the damaged city walls. Countless undead began to gather, and they even transferred some outstanding students from the Calamity Academy. There were different opinions about Ron's actions within the Scourge Church. Many people, including dozens of powerhouses from the Sacred Domain, did not think highly of Ron's counterattack. However, surprisingly, as the Great Elder, Homelin did not express his opinion. He neither supported nor opposed, and only allowed Ron to make the decision. Ron understood that Homelin's grandfather did not think highly of his counterattack. After all, the Battle of Undercity had just ended, and there were many things waiting to be done. Facing the Burning Legion, who was at the peak of their power, the result could be imagined. Homelin also felt that Ron's initiative to start a war at this time was a little too radical. Although they had won the Battle of Undercity, it did not mean that the Scourge Church had the strength to compete with the Burning Legion. On the third day after Ron's order to counterattack, the undead army surged out of Undercity and pounced on the nearest stronghold occupied by the Burning Legion. The Burning Legion had less than 1,000 soldiers stationed in this city, and they were led by an evil god with the strength of the sacred domain. They were caught off guard by the Scourge army, and after resisting for only half an hour, the stronghold of the Burning Legion fell. The evil god stationed here had his neck broken by Golden Beaumont K. Undead mages, death knights, undead assassins, undead swordsmen, undead warlocks, and other professions formed a powerful undead army. They all wore black battle robes and black armor that did not reflect the sunlight at all. Looking from the sky, they looked like a large group of black ants. The blood-red skull flag fluttered in the wind, emitting a monstrous killing intent. There were not many soldiers stationed in each stronghold of the Burning Legion, and this made it easier for Ron to destroy them one by one. He did not even have to do it himself. Just his subordinates from the sacred domain were enough to take care of everything. Now, the undead army did not only consist of humans who trained as undead. Even the orcs, elves, and magical beasts had joined the ranks of the Burning Legion. Even the deans of the 3 major academies of Balavax had appeared in the undead army. The current Scourge army could be said to be the strongest in history. Just the sacred domain alone had more than 100 people. Ron did not expect that when he launched his counterattack, so many sacred domain powerhouses from all over the world would respond and join the expeditionary army of the Scourge Church. This increased his confidence even more. The Scourge Church's counterattack caused a huge commotion in the entire Noah continent. When the dark dragon R.A. Firth heard the news, he opened his mouth so wide that he could swallow an entire duck egg. He did not expect 2 things. One was that the Burning Legion was defeated when they attacked Undercity, and the other was that Ron launched a counterattack so quickly. Did he want to die? Ron did not have the time to care about R.A. Firth's thought. He only had one goal, and that was to eliminate the Burning Legion as soon as possible. Chapter 7:13. The undead army of the Scourge Church was like a hot knife through butter. They continued to push forward and soon killed their way into the Holy Roman Empire. Thick dark clouds floated over Quebec City, as if the whole city was shrouded in darkness. The dark ritual was still going on. Due to the constant slaughter of creatures, the strong smell of blood filled the whole city, making people nauseous. The city walls of Quebec had long been piled up with slaughtered corpses. The blood that flowed out had dried up, exuding a strong stench. Magic circle more than half of the blood in the blood pool had flooded the body of the Lord of Hell, Soren. The blood flowed slowly, bubbling like boiling magma. Above the blood pool, countless souls hovered and danced, making mournful cries. On the edge of the blood pool, the magic stones on the 18 huge pillars emitted a faint light. As soon as the souls approached the magic stones, they were all absorbed and entered Soren's body along the lines of the magic circle. The process of the dark ritual was bloody and cruel. Seeing all this, Sophia, who was sitting on the throne, finally regained some confidence in Long Inu. She could feel that her father's bodily functions began to gradually become active. Although this guy is very wretched, he still has some skills. Sophia thought as she looked at the short and thin figure of Long Inu on the high platform. At this moment, Long Inu was holding a staff, waving it crazily like a convulsion. His mouth made vague sounds, and the magic circle was slowly operating under his power. At this time, a demon guard quickly walked to Sophia's side and whispered a few words in her ear. "You what?" Sophia was shocked when she heard it. Her yellow eyes were wide open. The undead actually launched a counterattack against us? Impossible. "It's true," the demon guard said in a low voice. "They have killed our troops stationed in various places and are now rushing toward us in a grandiose manner." The angry Princess Sophia slammed her hand on the chair. With a bang, the sturdy chair was smashed by her palm. "How dare they? We didn't trouble them, but they dared to come to our door." She stood up with a swish and paced back and forth angrily. "Why? They dare to do this? Don't they know the strength of the Burning Legion? It's not something that the natives can imagine at all? They think they don't know the immensity of heaven and earth after killing Pius and Yasset. I think they are looking for death. Cthulhu King Ravens said coldly. He took a step forward. Your Highness, please allow me to personally lead the army and destroy these undead. No hurry. At this time, Sophia actually, to deal with these weak undead. Countless attacks rained down, and soon the city gate, which had not been completely repaired, collapsed with a loud bang. Under the lead of the Death Knight, the Scourge Church's undead army charged into the city like a whirlwind. Countless banners fluttered in the wind, and blood-red skeletons floated in the air above the battlefield. Of course, the Burning Legion's hell creatures also began to counterattack. They were naturally fierce and did not fear death. Boom! The city wall collapsed. A huge creature more than 10 meters tall broke through the wall and charged out. It was a troll, a terrifying magical beast from hell. He had 2 disproportionately large arms on his body, and his body was as hard as iron. He waved his huge arms and smashed down with a fist. Boom! A huge crater appeared on the ground. Dozens of skeleton warriors and skeleton mages were smashed into pieces. Even the Terror Knight, who had the strongest defense, was no exception. This guy's strength had reached the sacred domain. Under the lead of the troll, countless low-level hell creatures charged out from the other side and attacked the left wing of the Scourge Church's army. Brother Lombard, I'll leave that guy to you, Ron said to Lombard, who was beside him, after staring at the troll's huge body for a long time. Heh, leave this big guy to me. Lombard grinned. Brother Ron, I'll never disappoint you. Ron nodded. Along the way, Lombard had helped him the most. He was also one of the people he trusted the most. Lombard took out a shield and scepter from his space bag. After buffing himself and his troops with an aura skill, he shouted at the top of his lungs, Brothers of War Bear. The time for battle has come. Charge. Kill. Under the lead of Lombard, the War Bear mercenaries let out a deafening battle cry. The tens of thousands of voices were so uniform that even the birds in the sky fell down in fright. After several years of operation, the giant bear mercenary group that the Holy Knight Lombard had rebuilt was now the strongest mercenary group in the Noah continent. Because they had been hunting exotic beasts in other planes, they weren't affected too much. However, they had now joined Ron's Scourge and became the vanguard. They had repeatedly made contributions in the counterattack against the Burning Legion. At this moment, they were already engaged in a fierce battle with the Burning Legion on the left. Countless skeletons crawled up from the ground, fell down and crawled up again. The undead howled as their bodies that had been cut in two continued to crawl forward. The Death Knights, undead swordsmen, and other melee professions were like a wall in front of them. The necromancers and necromancers at the back were constantly urging their soul force to attack. Ron didn't move. He only stood silently in the crowd, quietly staring at the battlefield in the distance. At this moment, his brows furrowed tightly. In the sky to the northwest of the city, a red cloud floated over from afar. It carried the aura of death and slaughter, and the terrifying roar of the creatures of hell. They're finally here. Ron took a light breath and swept his spiritual sense in that direction like lightning. Boom! As their spiritual senses collided, it was as if they had been fiercely attacked. The space distorted due to the collision of the two forces, and there were also traces of sparks in the air. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. In just a moment, Ron sensed that there were 5 great demons there. 5 great demons were 5 divine realm experts. In order to deal with Ron's counterattack, Sophia had not only sent out a large number of troops, but also sent out the 5 strongest demons. A fierce battle was unavoidable. These are the divine realm experts of the undead? A great demon with 6 long horns sitting on a demon chariot smiled. They don't seem like much. Don't underestimate them. They're the ones who killed Pisces and Yasset. Another demon at the side reminded. Unlike the demon from before, this guy only had a single horn on his head, and it was even on his forehead. The great demon with 6 long horns smiled. Pisces and Yaset were just 2 idiots. Their deaths don't mean anything. He paused. It's not strange that there are powerful native creatures in the secondary planes, but to warriors like us who have experienced hundreds of battles, they're still trash. The great demon with 6 horns stood up and smiled. Come, let's have a taste of this powerful native's elegant demeanor. Under the leadership of the great demon with 6 horns, the other demons also stood up and stood in the air, flying in Ron's direction. The Scourge Church's army had been waiting for a long time, but when the 5 demons approached, everyone still felt a powerful pressure. This pressure was enough to make the entire world tremble. Ron's figure slowly rose, bringing everyone's attention to him as he rose into the sky, confronting the 5 great demons. Ron. Looking at Ron's lonely figure in the sky, Kadena could not help but be secretly worried. You're very courageous, native. Looking at Ron, who was quietly floating in the air, the great demon with 6 horns smiled. However, courage alone isn't enough. We'll tear you to pieces in an instant. Do you have any last words? The great demon with 6 horns smiled, his tone full of arrogance and disdain. To them, Ron's courage was nothing more than a tool to pass the time. Are you done? Before the great demon could finish speaking, Ron interrupted him. He nodded slightly and raised his head from his deep collar, coldly saying, If you're done, you can die. You're courting death. The demons were arrogant, but they did not expect Ron to be even more arrogant than them. In an instant, the demons were enraged. Pung, pung, pung. Just as he finished speaking, powerful black flames suddenly erupted from the 5 demons. The flames burned fiercely, and a powerful aura of destruction filled every corner of the space. Chapter 7:14. The corner of Ron's mouth rose, revealing a faintly discernible smile, as if he didn't care about those demons at all. Come out! Frost dragons! Ron chanted an incantation while waving his dragonbone staff. Roar! Following a world-shaking roar, accompanied by an extremely powerful icy aura, 3 huge frost dragons stretched their heads out of the void, their powerful ice power covering the entire world. At this time, the 5 demons quickly exchanged glances. Kill! Under the command of the 6-horned demon, the 5 figures quickly rushed out and attacked Ron. The 6-horned demon in the lead held 2 huge weapons. These weapons looked a bit unique, neither like a sword nor a sickle. They were like a circle divided into 2 halves, like a crescent moon. The sharp edges were facing the front, flickering with a frightening cold light. In the sky, a powerful force shook the surroundings. Even the earth started to tremble, and the sky seemed to collapse. Below, the Scourge Church's undead army had already launched a huge charge at the Burning Legion. Walking corpses, undead, skeletons, and other undead creatures seemed to be free as they threw themselves at the Burning Legion in waves. A Terror Knight split a 3-headed hellhound in 2 before being killed by an imp in the blink of an eye. Then, the imp was tightly held by a walking corpse, unable to move. In an instant, the walking corpse burst out with all the power in its body, blowing the imp and itself to pieces. The fierce battle was as bitter as ever. To the Scourge Church and its allies, as a race that grew up in the Noah continent, they had no way out. Kill! Kill these bastards! Die! You damned invaders, the soldiers cursed. They didn't care about the shocking wounds on their bodies as they tirelessly brandished their weapons, fiercely fighting against the hellish creatures. One by one, the young soldiers fell to the ground, their eyes closed forever. Compared to the fierce battle on the ground, the battle in the sky affected everyone's heart. The 5 demons surrounded Ron, launching wave after wave of attack. The destructive power was like flames burning half the sky. Under the full attack of the 5 demons, Ron seemed to be somewhat powerless. Ron, for the fate of the continent, for all the creatures of the Noah continent. You have to do your best, Aurora quickly pulled the bowstring as if she were playing a zither, at the same time secretly praying in her heart. Kid, you should surrender quickly. Maybe we're in a good mood and can leave your corpse intact. Ha ha ha. A demon laughed wantonly, waving the huge sickle in his hand even more hurriedly. One of the 3 frost dragons had already been killed by them, and the other 2 had suffered varying degrees of damage. This kid's dead. Another demon, as long as we kill these 2 frost dragons, the summoner will not have any undead creatures to protect him. This is the price of overestimating yourself. You alone can't win against the 5 of us. The strength of our main battle army is not something you natives can imagine, the 6-horned demon said to Ron in a lecturing tone. Ron did not respond, his expression was still indifferent. Although he was at a disadvantage, he didn't seem to be in a hurry. He had been observing the demons' movements, secretly assessing their strength. According to Ron's estimation, these demons' realms weren't high, around the early god realm. To him, a mid-level god realm undead magus, they didn't pose much pressure. Roar! Finally, the remaining 2 frost dragons could no longer resist the demons' attacks, turning into ashes under the powerful destructive power. After killing all of Ron's frost dragons, a smile finally appeared on the demons' faces. Hand over your life, native. A greater demon grinned maliciously, his figure rapidly closing in, raising his butcher's knife and slashing down on Ron. For Ron, who had completely grasped the demon's strength, there was no point in teasing them any further. He smiled coldly and launched a counterattack. Plague havoc! Ron couldn't help but show weakness. He waved the dragon bone staff in his hand, and the green fog around him expanded as he opened his domain. In the blink of an eye, countless green mists filled every corner of the space, carrying a powerful plague virus. After Undead Calamity and Undead Overture, Plague Havoc became Ron's 3rd domain ability. Plague Devastation was a type of undead domain power, and it was also the most terrifying domain power. It could bring about weakening, cursing, and other diseases. Wounds would no longer heal. Not only that, dead corpses and living humans would all become sources of infection. The most terrifying thing was that even after the domain power disappeared, the land that had been affected by the plague devastation would continue to be polluted, and not a single blade of grass would grow within a radius of 100 miles. Sacred domain experts were experts because they possessed the power of a domain. This kind of power was above all professions, even if it wasn't perfect. A god domain was a higher level and more powerful form above the sacred domain. In front of a god domain, the power of a sacred domain was as laughable as a child's toy. Not good. My power has been greatly weakened, a demon's face changed as he cried out in alarm. It's the power of a domain. The 6-horned demon gnashed his teeth in anger. I didn't expect this guy to have this kind of ability. Quickly activate your domain. Another demon shouted. The strength of a domain lay in its invulnerability. Unless there was a powerful skill that surpassed the void, it was impossible to shake a domain in the slightest. Of course, there was another way, and that was to similarly activate a domain to resist. Hellfire. Similarly, the 5 demons also propped up their domains to resist Ron's death domain. For a moment, the black energy and the green energy intertwined with each other, bursting forth with intense sparks. I'm impossible. The 5 demons' faces paled. After activating the Hellfire domain, not only did their strength not recover, it was even decreasing at an accelerated rate. At the same time, a frightening fact occurred to them at the same time. Whether it was in terms of power or realm, the other party's domain was much higher than theirs. You're a mid-level god realm master. One of the demons stammered, his eyes were filled with fear as he looked at Ron. A mid-level god realm master was an elite among god realm masters. In general, out of 1,000 low-level god realm masters, only one mid-level god realm master would emerge. Even in the Burning Legion, a mid-level God Realm Master was an outstanding existence. When a God Realm Master's strength reached mid-level, it was no longer a low-level God Realm Master. In comparison, there was a huge gap between them. Not good, run. Seeing that the situation was not good, the demons immediately used teleportation to flee. At this moment, they finally understood how Pisces and Yset, who had similar strength to them, died. They were the prey, the other party was the hunter. At this moment, the demons' hearts were filled with regret. If they had known earlier that the other party was a mid-level God Realm Master, perhaps they would have come up with a better plan, but now, it's too late. Do you think you can still escape? At this moment, Ron finally revealed his powerful and terrifying strength. His domain power was released without restraint, sealing the entire space in an instant, weakening the demons to the point that they didn't even have the strength to run. Under the influence of Ron's plague devastation domain, the undead creatures of the Scourge army seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. Their bodies were covered in the plague, and even their attacks carried traces of plague power, making them even more powerful. Under the support of this strange and powerful energy, the Burning Legion finally couldn't hold on any longer, collapsing rapidly in front of the undead army. No, don't. There was intense fear in the demon's eyes. His huge body struggled, but it was as if he was being pulled by an invisible force, involuntarily leaning in Ron's direction. Ron sneered, reaching out a hand. Ron's hand passed through the demon's head effortlessly. With a "kacha" sound, he pulled out something from the demon's head. It was the demon's soul. That demon's soul was caught by Ron, struggling with all its might and howling in despair. The demon whose soul was taken away opened his mouth wide, and his eyes quickly dimmed. His corpse fell weakly to the ground. Hiddleston! The rest of the demons shouted. The six-horned demon said angrily, "Bastard, you actually dared to kill him? Why wouldn't I dare?" Ron sneered, opened his mouth, and sucked the demon's soul into his sea of consciousness. He stared at the demons and said slowly, "To most of the creatures in the Noah continent, you are high and mighty experts. But in my eyes, you demons are just ant-like existences. It's only right for me to kill you." Ron took a step forward and stared at the demons. His eyes were filled with anger. When you could control the life and death of others at will, did you ever think that there would be a day when you would be killed? The six-horned demon took a step back. His bloodthirsty eyes were filled with anger and fear. As a high and mighty demon, he had never thought of this problem. Die! Ron's eyes were cold as he faced the demons who had lost the ability to resist and stretched out his hand. "No. No, you can't kill us." Realizing that death was coming, a demon cried out. "If you kill us, the Burning Legion will avenge us." Another demon said, "That's right. The Burning Legion's strength is something you can't imagine. You lowly human. Have you thought of the consequences before killing me?" The six-horned demon was indeed the strongest demon leader. He looked much calmer than the other demons, but his trembling legs betrayed him. All creatures would be afraid in the face of death. Even the savage demons were no exception. No novelty at all, Ron snorted. "Since I've embarked on the path of resisting the Burning Legion, I'm not afraid of your revenge." As he spoke, Ron raised his head slightly. Bang, 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 several dull sounds were heard. The heads of the four demons exploded like watermelons, and the bright and transparent souls inside were extracted by Ron. The demons' eyes were filled with strong unwillingness and regret. Their heads tilted, and their huge bodies fell like kites with broken strings. Chapter 7:15. In the sky, the thick black fog gradually dissipated. Warm sunlight shone through the clouds and onto the ground. The sky was clear and cloudless, as if nothing had happened. Boom! 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 5 huge figures fell from the sky and crashed onto the ground with dull thuds. The demons had been defeated. All of this left everyone on the ground dumbfounded. The moment they saw the 5 corpses, the entire battlefield became silent. The races from hell did not expect the powerful demons to be defeated. As for the members of the Scourge Church, they did not expect to be defeated so quickly. Long live! Long live the young master! No one knew who shouted first, but soon after, cheers like the mountains and seas filled the air. In an instant, the entire battlefield was boiling. The young master is invincible. O great young master, I will continue to follow in your footsteps. Please accept me as your humble servant. Some of the humans who did not believe in the Scourge Church had already knelt down and started chanting. Some of them had even sworn allegiance to the Scourge Church. Seeing all this, Kadena and the others finally relaxed. Looking at Ron's small figure in the sky, they only felt that he was infinitely tall. Ron had defeated the demons once again. This meant that the Scourge Church had won once again. The hellish races were ashen, their morale low. Having lost their backbone, the hellish creatures scurried around like headless flies. Ron stood quietly in the sky. He slowly lowered his head and looked at the hellish creatures on the ground. A strong killing intent flashed in his eyes. He took a deep breath and slowly spat out a sentence. Leave none alive. Ron's words were powerful and resonant. Through his powerful strength, they spread far and wide. In an instant, the entire battlefield heard his deep and powerful voice. Kill them all, leave none alive. Kill these damned invaders. The young master has given the order, leave none alive. Hearing Ron's order, the people were once again in an uproar. They raised their weapons high, and the sound of fighting rose. Kill. Hundreds of blood-red skull flags were raised and fluttered in the wind. They were majestic and filled with killing intent. The undead army shouted their slogan and launched their final attack on the hellish creatures. Kill! 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 Under the lead of the Death Knights and undead swordsmen, they tore a hole in the burning legion's defense. Following that, the undead army broke through like a hot knife through butter, killing their way into the enemy group like a whirlwind. It was a chaotic battle. Both sides had brought out their trump cards. At this moment it was either you die or I die. The courage of the hell creatures was fully displayed at this moment. Even though their commander had died and they were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers and strength, they still managed to put up a fight and caused a lot of casualties to the Catastrophe army. However, the soldiers of the Calamity Church suddenly discovered to their surprise that their injuries had inexplicably healed. Flesh had also regenerated from the wounds they had sustained. That's right, this is the power of the young master's domain. My strength has also recovered. I can fight again. A necromancer who was seriously injured and on the verge of death shouted excitedly. The young master is protecting us. Charge. Kill those invaders. Pursue the glory of the young master. In an instant, the undead army exploded with courage and fighting spirit. Countless skeletons stood up. Terror knights and skeleton mages were also summoned. In the sky, countless gargoyles flew over their heads, and 1 or 2 abyssal bone dragons were sandwiched between them. The strong undead army was like an unstoppable tide, drowning the burning legion in an instant. Sunset, dusk, Quebec City. Hearing a little devil who had escaped with great difficulty report the battle situation, all the powerhouses from hell in the hall were livid. Bang! A loud sound was heard. A teacup fell to the ground and was smashed into pieces. Bastard, we've been wiped out again. After a long silence, Princess Sophia finally exploded. She stood up. It's the undead again. Die. All of you die for me. Princess Sophia's roar reverberated throughout the hall, causing the dust in the hall to fall. Princess Sophia in the main plane of hell was famous for being unruly and irritable. However, in the Noah continent, the number of times she lost her temper was more than the number of times she lost her temper in hell in a year. These damned aboriginals! How dare they challenge the dignity of the Burning Legion again and again? Are they not afraid of death? Sophia was so angry that she kept pacing back and forth like a lion in a cage. Her face was livid, and the powerhouses of hell below did not even dare to breathe loudly. No. I can't let it go like this. Princess Sophia, who was pacing, suddenly stopped and stood still. Her eyes flashed with a strong murderous intent. These damned undead killed 7 of my demons. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers. This debt. I must settle it with them. Yes. Kill them. Kill these arrogant aboriginals. Those who kill my people, no matter what race they are from, must die. As soon as Sophia's voice fell, the powerhouses immediately flared up. They clamored, filled with righteous indignation, wanting to take revenge. 7 demons, all powerhouses of the divine realm, plus hundreds of thousands of soldiers of the Burning Legion and hell creatures. If this loss was placed in a war in the main plane, it would naturally not be considered much. However, to suffer such a serious defeat in a small secondary plane was definitely a disgrace to the Burning Legion. It was absolutely unacceptable. Even if they killed Ron in the end and destroyed the Scourge Church, Sophia would still lose face. For the first time, the unknown Ron of the small Scourge Church had finally entered the eyes of the demon princess Sophia. She secretly swore in her heart that she would definitely exterminate this person, only then would she be able to vent the hatred in her heart. Hell's powerhouses were also holding their breath. In this small secondary plane, no one had ever dared to challenge the dignity of the Burning Legion, not even the Legion of Holy Angels. Seeing that all the powerhouses supported her revenge, Sophia's expression became slightly better. She raised her hand, about to issue an order. "Wait, Your Highness." Just as Sophia made up her mind, she was interrupted by an abrupt voice. The one who spoke was the Cthulhu King Ravens. He took a step forward. "Your Highness, please reconsider. I suspect that the other party might be a mid-level God Realm powerhouse." Mid-level God Realm powerhouse? Hearing the Cthulhu King Raven's words, Sophia's expression tightened, and she slowly lowered her hand. That's right, to be able to easily kill a demon, only a mid-level God Realm powerhouse could do it. Could it be that guy really had the strength of a mid-level God Realm? If he really was a mid-level God Realm powerhouse, then things had become very troublesome. A mid-level God Realm powerhouse was an extremely noble existence in Hell's primary plane. Their status was one level higher than the average Great Fiend. A mid-level God Realm powerhouse had already grasped part of the power of laws, and could even use God Force. Sophia calmed down in an instant. Although she was angry, she wasn't an impulsive person, she was thinking. A mid-level God Realm. That Ron guy is only 27 or 28 years old. Damn it, how could a declining undead have such a stunning genius? Sophia clenched her fists, veins popping out on her skin, showing that her heart was not calm at all. Looking at Sophia's expression, Ravens already knew that the princess had accepted his suggestion, or at least was considering it. After all, this matter was highly possible. If that necromancer called Ron was really a mid-level God Realm powerhouse, then they should be more cautious. At least, the other party wasn't an existence that could be easily bullied. The deaths of the 7 great fiends also proved this point. Just as Ravens quietly retreated, a voice abruptly sounded. "Yoho! My dear Lord Ravens, why do I feel like you're getting worse and worse? Is it so easy to be a coward?" Those who could stand in this meeting naturally weren't ordinary people, they were all Sophia's trusted subordinate. Ravens looked around and saw a familiar figure. It was a fiend, tall and muscular like other fiends, with a ferocious face. At this moment, he was staring at Ravens with a mocking gaze. Xerbok! Ravens spat out this name through gritted teeth, his eyes almost spitting fire. No need, this guy was his sworn enemy. In Hell, the Fiend clan and the Fiend God clan belonged to different camps, both sides were like fire and water. In the end, the stronger Fiend God clan was still ahead above the Fiend God clan. Seeing that the Fiend God King Ravens was highly regarded by the princess, her subordinates were naturally dissatisfied. Xerbok was one of the representatives. Kzurbak looked at Ravens with disdain, his voice loud and clear. Princess Sophia, so what if that guy is a mid-level God Realm master? Yes, a mid-level God Realm expert is strong, but in the eyes of the Burning Legion, he's just a slightly stronger ant. Princess Sophia, a mid-level God Realm expert. There's one right in front of you. Kzurbaka's eyes burned with passion. He took a step forward and knelt down on one knee. Princess, please let me deal with this guy. Even if I don't have the confidence to bring him back alive, I will bring his corpse back for you. Ravens looked at Kzurbak coldly. He knew that the other party was putting on a show against him. Even though he didn't get along with this guy, Ravens had to admit that Kzurbaka's strength was just as strong as his. They were both mid-level God Realm experts. Both of them had crossed swords in front of Princess Sophia more than once. Hearing Kzurbaka's words, Sophia fell silent. She began to consider Kzurbaka's suggestion. At this time, Raven snorted and said coldly, Lord Kzurbak, please don't forget why we're here. We're not here to fight to the death with those aboriginals. That's not our true goal. We should focus on reviving Lord Sauron. As for this damned Noah continent, it doesn't matter to us who occupies it. If that's the case, Lord Ravens, you're going to cower in front of those natives. Xilak stood up and looked at Ravens with a faint smile. Don't forget, this guy is challenging the dignity of our Burning Legion. Kzurbaka's gaze turned to the other demons. Our Burning Legion is invincible in other planes. Any army or force would collapse like a flood in front of us. There's no reason for us to suffer such a big loss in this small Noah continent. Princess, we can't accept this. Yes, Princess. We can't accept this. We want revenge. We want to teach those damned undead a lesson. The undead have already declined. What are we afraid of? Kzurbaka's words caused a chorus of cries from some demons, and for a moment, the demons were all in an uproar. As the princess's trusted aide, Raven's role was exceptionally enviable, especially when he wasn't a demon. The evil god tribe couldn't take it anymore, and began to argue with the demons. However, due to the small number of people, their forces seemed weak. The corner of Raven's mouth twitched a few times. He knew that the emotions of the demons had been successfully stirred up, and it was useless to argue with them, so he could only turn to Princess Sophia. Princess, I still think that proper business is more important. As long as Lord Sauron is revived, nothing else matters. Princess, I think we should take the initiative to attack, and teach those undead a lesson. Kzurbak also rushed to speak first. Once again, the two of them began to argue with each other. Stop arguing. Princess Sophia finally couldn't take it anymore, and slapped the chair fiercely. Only then did Kzurbak and Ravens calm down. Their eyes coincidentally looked at Princess Sophia, believing that she had already made a decision in her heart. Sophia was expressionless. Temporarily postpone the attack. Everything is for the sake of Lord Father's revival. All powerhouses strictly guard their positions, and there must be no mistakes. Yes. Seeing that the princess supported his suggestion, Ravens heaved a sigh of relief. Kzurbak glared fiercely at Ravens, and unwillingly retreated. Sophia slowly raised her head, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. She clenched her fists angrily. Ron, I've swallowed this, but don't be too proud. When my father is revived, I'll definitely lead an army and kill you personally. No matter which plane you escape to. I won't let you go. Chapter 7:16. Within Ron's soul ring, countless souls were dancing in the air, letting out mournful cries. A large number of souls were thrown into the soul converter, and crushed. They were released as threads of pure soul energy and then absorbed by Ron. Countless soul energy poured into Ron's sea of consciousness. For a moment, Ron's sea of consciousness was filled to the brim. Even Ron's soul felt joyful. Especially the souls of the 5 demons. After being crushed by the soul converter, the enormous amount of soul energy released shocked Ron. Strength and the strength of the soul were usually directly proportional. The souls of the 5 demon domain experts were of great benefit to Ron. Ron frantically absorbed the enormous amount of soul energy. At the same time, he entered a state of cultivation. This cultivation lasted for a total of 10 days. Outside the huge tent, Vivian and her student Lisa were standing face to face. The current Lisa was no longer the young and inexperienced girl from before. Instead, she was a young and beautiful girl. At this moment, she was wearing a black necromancer's robe and holding a long bone staff in her hand. Her entire body was emitting a bewitching charm. As one of Vivian's most talented students, Lisa was already a grand magus necromancer. Her strength was close to Paige. Paige was also a grand magus necromancer. He wanted to advance to the sacred domain, but he couldn't advance no matter what. Sure enough, the sacred domain wasn't that easy to reach. Even if Paige was a genius, he would still encounter a bottleneck. Lord Ron is really powerful. He actually killed the 5 demons in one breath. Lisa's eyes were filled with reverence. She had long since prostrated herself in admiration of Ron. When she thought of the terrifying demons, her heart trembled. She didn't expect that the 5 demons would be so easily killed by Ron. Vivian was silent. She naturally knew that Ron's strength had increased by quite a bit. This was also one of the reasons why he had the confidence to rebel. However, was the Burning Legion that easy to defeat? A main army had tens of thousands of God Realm experts. The death of a few demons was nothing to the Burning Legion. Over the past few days, Vivian had also learned some things about the main battle legions of the main plane through certain channels. It was precisely because of this that she felt worried. The might of the Burning Legion was probably only the tip of the iceberg. Vivian sighed softly. It's a pity that he has entered the state of cultivation again. This time, I don't know when he will come out again. Since Ron had entered a state of cultivation, the Scourge Church did not dare to rashly launch an attack. They could only stand guard in place for 10 days. Lisa gently brushed the hair in front of her forehead. Teacher, what should we do now? Vivian used to be Lisa's mentor. When there was no one around, they would address each other as teacher and student. Wait, Vivian said firmly. She knew that without Ron, attacking the Burning Legion would be just empty talk. However, we can't wait to gather information. We must hurry. I must understand what the Burning Legion is doing now. Vivian looked at Lisa. Ever since the 5 demons and hundreds of thousands of soldiers were killed by Ron, the Burning Legion had once again fallen into silence. This was not in line with their usual fighting style. This caused Vivian to feel very uneasy. She knew that the Burning Legion still had considerable strength in the continent of Noah. The Scourge Church had only destroyed a small part of them. Why? What are they trying to do? Why haven't they attacked us yet? This was what Vivian thought in her heart. It was also the answer she had been searching for. In addition, after Ron had entered the state of cultivation, all the pressure had been shouldered by her alone. She had not slept well these past few days. Yes, Teacher Vivian. Lisa bowed slightly and said, I will definitely do this well. The vast and boundless wilderness presented a beautiful expanse of green. Lisa stood alone in the empty plains, breathing in the fresh air and bathing in the morning light. Her thoughts were immersed in her memories. She was recalling what Teacher Vivian had instructed her to do a few days ago. At this moment, a voice interrupted her memories. Lady Lisa, there's a discovery. It was a death knight. She rode a skeletal horse in front of Lisa and dismounted. She bowed respectfully. Lady Lisa, we found the corpse of a magical beast not far away. It seems like there are traces of destruction energy burning it. In order to obtain information and understand the Burning Legion's movements, Lisa had personally led a scouting team to the fallen area to search for traces of the Burning Legion. During this time, they had clashed with the Burning Legion's hell creatures. The corpse of a magical beast? Lisa rolled her eyes. Let's go and take a look. Lisa brought a few people to the small river by the mountain stream. There was already a scouting team of undead guarding there. When they saw Lisa coming over, they all bowed. Lisa walked over to take a look and saw a human corpse lying quietly by the river. His body was covered in wounds, and there were burn marks everywhere. His abdomen had been bitten by a wild beast. It turned out that when Lisa's subordinates found the corpse, it was being eaten by a few hyenas. They walked over and chased the hyenas away before quickly reporting to Lisa. "He's not human," Lisa observed for a while before taking a deep breath. "This is a magical beast from the sacred domain." A magical beast from the sacred domain. The expressions of the subordinates changed. They did not expect this to be a magical beast that had transformed into a human and had the strength of the sacred domain. For a magical beast with the strength of the sacred domain to be injured to such an extent, one could imagine how powerful its enemy was. Moreover, from the wounds, it was somewhat similar to the destruction energy from hell. In other words, this magical beast from the sacred domain had fought with the burning legion of hell. It's a pity that he's already dead. There's no way for him to tell us more. A death knight at the side slowly said. His masked voice had a hint of dullness. Lisa reached out and pressed on the corpse of the magical beast from the sacred domain. After a while, her expression gradually changed. "No, he's not dead. He's still alive." Lisa cried out in alarm. "What, he's still alive?" The faces of the surrounding undead were filled with disbelief. Although they were not fond of magical beasts, Lisa and the others had to admit that magical beasts had much stronger vitality than humans. With such injuries, they would have died long ago. At this time, Lisa's expression changed. "Not good, something's coming towards us." Through the crows in the distance, Lisa saw a red cloud rushing towards them. It seemed to be coming for them. "It's an imp that came out to scout." After seeing the appearance of the enemy, Lisa's heart sank. She said coldly, "Everyone, get to your positions and prepare for battle. Team 1, you're in charge of escorting this injured guy. Leave the rest to me." But the Death Knight was the team leader of Team 1. He immediately objected. "No buts," Lisa said coldly. Lisa said coldly, "I'm the one in charge here. Carry out my orders immediately." Yes. The Death Knight was helpless. He could only wave his hand and command his subordinates to carry the magical beast from the sacred domain that had transformed into a human onto his skeletal horse. At this time, Lisa had already taken out her bone staff. Looking at the approaching red cloud, she sneered. "Come, you bastards. I'll let you see the true power of undead magic." Chapter 7:17. Stepping on the footsteps of fresh flowers, interpreting terror and death. "Come out, Terror Knight." Lisa's face was cold. She kept waving her bone staff, and a powerful soul force filled the surroundings. A Terror Knight in heavy armor slowly rose from the shining hexagram magic array. "GG. Kill her." When the little demons saw Sarah, they were like flies that saw smelly meat. They happily pounced on her, and their ferocious little eyes were filled with murderous intent. Boom, boom, the scouting team led by Sarah had already exchanged fire with the little demons. A powerful destructive force rushed into the sky, burning the entire sky red. The ground was filled with demonic soul force. As the black fog wandered, white skeletons climbed out of the ground one after another. They held simple weapons in their hands and rushed to kill the little demons. The flames of war were ignited on the plains, and the curtains of a tragic battle were drawn. Huff, 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 fire, raging flames. The blazing flames seemed to want to evaporate every drop of water on his body, and the high temperature made his hair curl. Claire only felt that his body was surrounded by raging flames. He kept running forward, but it was a pity that there was only a sea of fire in front of him. He did not know how long he would have to run to the end. Claire's mouth was dry, and he desperately used the last of his strength to resist the deadly flames. I I can't. I'm going to die. Finally, Claire could no longer hold on. Plop! He fell to the ground, panting heavily. The defensive barrier formed by his strength slowly dimmed until it disappeared. Finally, Claire gave up resisting, and he slowly closed his eyes. Hula! A sound was heard. At this moment, Claire felt a cool aura coming from his body, causing him to tremble. Then, the blazing flames that covered the sky seemed to disappear in an instant, and his body felt warm and comfortable. What's going on? Claire was surprised. What a comfortable feeling! Have I finally escaped from the flames? Claire weakly raised his eyelids. At this time, he heard cheers in his ears. Look! He's awake, it's true. The vitality of magical beasts is really tenacious. This guy's will to live is not bad, and his strength is also very strong, as expected of a magical beast. Claire was curious. He gritted his teeth and opened his eyes. What caught Claire's eyes was a group of humans in black robes. They were chattering about him. Judging from the temperament and aura of these people, they must be undead. You're finally awake. Claire opened his eyes and saw a woman standing in front of his bed. Her face was like a goose egg, and her eyebrows were like crescent moons. She had her hands behind her back, and her face was filled with the arrogance of a superior. The leader was none other than Vivian. At this moment, she was also sizing up the young man who was a magical beast. You saved me. After knowing that the other party was an undead, Claire was finally relieved. Having grown up in the kingdom of magical beasts, he had never come into contact with undead. He didn't have a good impression of them, but of course, he didn't have any ill intentions. Vivian smiled and pointed to a young girl beside her. It wasn't me, it was Sharon who saved you. I only healed you. Claire struggled to get up and thanked the woman and Sharon. Through their conversation, he found out that the woman in front of him was actually the Scourge Church's most powerful Grand Magus Necromancer Vivian. Mr. Clare, you escaped from the Burning Legion? After exchanging conventional greetings, Vivian also found out about the other party's background. She started to inquire about the Burning Legion. Yes. Claire nodded and answered, I was captured by them and imprisoned in the Holy Roman Empire's Quebec City. It wasn't easy for me to escape. Recalling his experience of escaping, Claire still had lingering fears, especially the last sphere of destruction, which had almost taken his life. If it weren't for the powerful defense of the furious lion body and the strong will to survive, he wouldn't have survived. Hearing Claire's account, everyone's heart was filled with shock. Once upon a time, powerhouses of the sacred domain were existences that could do as they pleased on the Noah continent, unless powerhouses of the divine realm came looking for trouble. But now, even escaping was so difficult. One could imagine how powerful the Burning Legion was. Sally couldn't help but ask, right, I heard that the Burning Legion captured many people. These people are also imprisoned in Quebec City. What are they trying to do? Quebec City. Recalling that hellish place, Claire's heart trembled. The mountains of corpses, the souls flying in the sky, and the sea of blood. All of these were like nightmares that kept appearing in his heart. Ah! Claire cried out in pain. He desperately covered his head and said loudly, Don't ask me. I don't know anything. I don't know. Vivian gave Sally a look. Sally understood and suddenly reached out a hand to press Claire's head tightly. She injected her soul power and finally calmed him down. Vivian sighed. Mr. Clare, although I don't know what happened to you, I guess it must be something extremely terrible that you don't dare to recall. However, what you know is very important to us. I hope you can understand. Hearing Vivian's explanation, Vivian sighed. Sally also tried to persuade him. Yes, Mr. Clare, I hope you can help us. We really need the information from Quebec City. Huff. Huff. Claire suppressed the fear in his heart with difficulty. He glanced at the two women and said in a hoarse voice, Miss Vivian, Miss Sally, it's not that I don't want to tell you, but I don't know much. Vivian and Sally exchanged a look, and Vivian said, "It's okay. Just tell us what you know." Claire calmed down and told him everything he had seen in Quebec City, without leaving out even the smallest detail. After listening to Claire's narration, everyone could not suppress the shock in their hearts. "You mean the Burning Legion is carrying out some kind of ancient ritual?" Vivian asked with a frown. "So, they captured a large number of creatures, extracted their blood essence and extracted their souls to carry out this evil ritual?" "Yes." Claire nodded and then shook his head. "Of course, this is just my own guess. If I hadn't found a chance to escape, I'd probably have become the sacrifice of the ritual." He paused for a moment. "Ah, that's right, I remember now. I heard the little demon guarding the place say that with the souls and blood of 10 million living beings, the great King of Hell, Lord Sauron, can be resurrected." "King of Hell, Sauron?" Everyone in the room exclaimed in unison. "This is a conspiracy. They're so serious about it, it must be because of this ritual." Vivian gasped and rubbed her hands nervously. "I don't know why, but I have a bad feeling. If the Burning Legion's ritual is completed, that King of Hell, Sauron, will really be resurrected. Then, our Noah continent will be finished." "So," Sally nodded firmly, "we must not let the Burning Legion's conspiracy succeed. This matter must be reported to the young master immediately." Chapter 7:18. What? You're saying that the Burning Legion is carrying out some evil plan in Quebec City? In a huge room, Ron, who had just recovered from his cultivation state, was shocked when he heard this. "Yes." Vivian nodded and replied, "This is the news I just received." Then, he told Ron about what he had learned from the enraged lion. "They're actually using 10 million lives as sacrifices in exchange for the resurrection of the King of Hell, Sauron?" When Ron heard this, he clenched his fists so tightly that his fingers turned slightly white. One could imagine the anger in his heart. This was 10 million living beings, not 10 million stones. These bastards! I can't let them run amok in the Noah continent. "Pa!" Ron fiercely slapped the armrest of the chair and stood up. "Young master, please calm down." No matter what, the Burning Legion was still at its peak on the Noah continent. Although the Calamity Church had won some victories against the Burning Legion, these victories seemed insignificant. Although the Calamity Church had won some victories against the Burning Legion, these victories seemed insignificant. Hearing Vivian's words, Ron quickly calmed down. He pondered as he walked in the room, his footsteps unusually heavy. "I understand." After a long time, Ron took a deep breath, turned around and looked at Vivian. "If I'm not wrong, this is the real reason why the Burning Legion came to the Noah continent." "What?" This time, it was Vivian's turn to be shocked. She quickly thought about it, and the more she thought about it, the more likely it was that the King of Hell, Sauron, came out of nowhere. So, if they really resurrected the King of Hell, their goal would be achieved. Vivian thought and said, "Yes." Ron's face was gloomy as he silently looked at the sky in the distance. "Then what do we do now?" "Tell this matter to everyone in the Noah continent and see their reaction." Ron pondered for a moment and replied, "Yes." Vivian replied and glanced at Ron. "These guys from the Noah continent are too disunited. Apart from us humans and some beastmen, the other races are indifferent, other than the humans represented by the Scourge Church and the orcs who had lost their homeland. The other forces and races were observing from the sidelines. Ever since the demons lost the war, they had been holed up in the Dragon Island. The elves used the geographical advantage of the elven forest to resist with all their might. With the addition of the Divine Realm champion Undine, the mountain giant, and the guardian beast Chimera, under the joint attack of the three Divine Realms, they successfully repelled the Burning Legion. However, after that incident, the elves had always been wise to protect themselves. They did not casually step out of the elven forest, nor did they take any countermeasures. Regarding this, Ron was rather helpless. He had once written a letter to Firth of the Demons and Grandmother Undine of the Elves during the counterattack. Unfortunately, both letters were like stones sinking into the sea, and there was no response. Ron slowly walked to the window, his pair of pitch-black eyes quietly looking out the window. After a long time, he said, "No matter what their attitude is, the goal of the Scourge Church will not change." Ron turned around and clenched his fists, a trace of determination in his eyes. "We must completely drive the Burning Legion out of the Noah continent." Under Vivian's operation, the enraged Lion Claire's encounter and the incident in Quebec quickly spread. For a moment, the entire Noah continent was in an uproar. What? They actually used our people to carry out an evil ritual? That's too cruel. These fellows deserve to die. Kill them. Fight it out with them. The brutality of the Burning Legion finally aroused the intense anger of all the races in the Noah continent. Coupled with the successive victories that the Scourge Church had achieved in the previous stages of the counterattack, it immediately ignited the desire of all the races in the Noah continent to resist. Under the leadership of the dragons Lord Firth of the Demons and the chairman of the Parliament Frigga, the magical beasts were the first to respond, attacking the various strongholds of the Burning Legion. Within 5 days, the Magical Beast Army had swiftly reclaimed all the territories of the Magical Beast Empire. Seeing that the Burning Legion had no reaction, the Magical Beast Army continued to advance east, attacking Quebec. Even the peace-loving elves were enraged by the evil actions of the Burning Legion. They quickly gathered, and countless elves charged out of the elven forest, attacking the Holy Roman Empire. Boom! 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 Intense cannon fire blasted open the city gates, and countless elves swarmed in. Following that, the cruel city war began. Charge! Kill them all! The elves blew the horn to signal the start of the attack. In an instant, the elven army swarmed over. Exquisite and intricate armor covered in intricate patterns were everywhere. The elves were fully armed and launched an attack on the stronghold where the Burning Legion was stationed. Whoosh, 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 arrows filled the sky and landed on the city walls like raindrops. Even though the magical arrows enhanced with elemental energy looked ordinary, their attack power was no less than the power of a small spell. Roar, roar, the hell creatures cried out in pain, but the arrows fell mercilessly, turning them into hedgehogs in a short while. The elven race's chariots continuously shot out spinning moon blades that were as sharp as blades, easily cutting through the tough skin of the hell creatures. In the air, countless elven race archers riding hippogriffs charged toward the city walls like a black cloud. In a short while, the city walls' defenses collapsed. Kill! Under the lead of the Blood Elf Knights, countless green banners broke into the city, followed closely by huntresses, druids of the claw, druids of the talons, treants, and so on. These rarely appeared in the Noah continent, appeared on the battlefield one by one. Roar, roar. The ferocity of the Burning Legion's hell creatures was completely beyond the imagination of the elves. They fiercely counterattacked and caused a lot of damage to the elves. A 3-headed hellhound bit off a chunk of flesh from an elven archer even though both of its heads had been cut off. A troll with a body full of arrows raised its fist and smashed a huntress who was on the verge of death into meat paste. Tragic. Too tragic to the Scourge Church that had been fighting the Holy See and the Burning Legion for a long time. This might not be a big deal. However, to the elves who did not have much battle experience, such a cruel scene was unimaginable. Some of the elves opened their mouths wide and stood there blankly, as if they were scared silly, watching helplessly as the hell creatures tore them to pieces. What are you waiting for? Are you waiting for death? Kill them all. The Blood Elf Knight Opavila wiped the blood from her face and yelled. At the same time, she waved the long sword in her hand and cut a hell creature that was lunging at her in half. At this moment, she looked like a bloody person, and a large amount of blood flowed down from her exquisitely decorated armor. The white elf Rian's handsome face was cold, and countless magic light bullets were released from his long staff. Like Opavala, he now had the strength of the sacred domain. Among the elven squads that Ron had encountered, the strongest captains, the White Elves Rian and Opavala, had already stepped into the sanctuary realm. The others had also entered the master level one by one, the prelude of half a step into the sanctuary realm. The elves' talent in cultivation was not something that humans could compare with. However, when they recalled that familiar figure in a black robe with an arrogant expression, Rian and Opavala could not help but sigh in their hearts. They did not know how this guy cultivated. He was younger than them, and was still a human, but he was already a genuine powerhouse of the divine realm. It seemed like only yesterday when they formed a team to carry out a mission together. Ron's growth was too fast, so fast that it was unbelievable. The elves living in the elven forest had always been peace-loving and aloof from worldly affairs. Even when the Burning Legion attacked the elven forest, after repelling the Burning Legion's attack, the elves did not think of revenge. Firstly, it was because of the difference in strength, and secondly, they did not want to cause more trouble. But now, after the Burning Legion's evil plan of 10 million creatures was exposed, it finally succeeded in arousing the anger of the elves. It should be known that many of the 10 million creatures that were sacrificed were elves who had been captured. The elven sacred Magus Rian already had the strength to stand alone. This time, it was him and Opavala who were attacking this stronghold. They could only succeed and not fail. As it was their first time leading a battle, both of them held their breaths and swore to win. Kill! The sunset filled the sky and the setting sun was like blood. When the sun set in the west, the battle finally ended. In this battle, the hell creatures of the stronghold were completely annihilated and the elves obtained the final victory. Standing in the human city that looked like ruins, Rian felt a sense of loss. In this battle, the elves who had gained the upper hand still suffered a lot of losses. Seeing the elite elven warriors leave this world one after another, Rian suddenly felt a kind of heartache. Was this war? So many beautiful lives were lost, what was it for? Rian kept asking himself. He raised his head and looked at the sunset in the distant sky as if he could find the answer there. Rian! A crisp voice interrupted Elian's thoughts. It was Opavala who was walking towards him quickly. She was fully armed, her tall body hidden in the hard and exquisite knight's armor. Her long ears were erect, and her long golden hair swayed in the wind. She looked noble and beautiful. At this moment, Opavala seemed to be in a very good mood as she quickly approached. Rian, I have already reported the situation here to High Priestess Undine. The High Priestess is very happy and also very gratified. Rian nodded lightly. From the High Priestess' words, he could tell that she was very satisfied with his performance this time. Rian calmed his excited heart and looked at Opavala. We must hurry to Quebec and report to the other elven armies and stop the Burning Legion's plan together. After the elves joined in the counterattack, and with the Scourge Church as an example, Firth and Frigga also led the magical beast army to make a comeback. They set off from Dragon Island and swept across the magical beast continent at lightning speed, quickly recovering the entire magical beast empire. Rebel, these damned natives! Do they really think that the Burning Legion is made of mud? After hearing this news, Princess Sophia became angry again, her roar echoing in the hall. Perhaps these natives have already forgotten the fear of the past. The demon Xerbok said coldly, now that things have come to this, it seems that it is impossible not to teach them a lesson. Chapter 719. As soon as Xerbok's voice fell, the hall fell silent. Traces of killing intent condensed in the air, suffocating everyone. At this moment, the demon Princess Sophia had calmed down. Her face was expressionless, just like a living stone. With the Noah continent's allied army pressing in, even Ravens didn't dare to casually express his opinion for fear of angering Her Royal Highness Sophia. The atmosphere in the hall was silent. Apart from Embark, who stood out firmly, the others didn't even dare to breathe loudly. It must be known that Her Royal Highness was very frightening when she was angry. Princess Sophia's face was still expressionless. Everyone knew that she was extremely angry. If she were to shout and roar, it wouldn't be so frightening. At this time, Sophia raised her head slightly and looked at Ravens, coldly asking, "How much longer?" Although she didn't say it explicitly, Ravens quickly realized that the princess was asking about her father. According to Mr. Longinu, Sir Sauron can be truly resurrected in about 7 days. Ravens thought for a moment and answered honestly. 7 days. Princess Sophia's beautiful eyes flashed with excitement and bloodthirst. Very good. Princess Sophia stood up and smiled, revealing 2 sharp canine teeth. In that case, let's play with those natives and let them know what true terror is. Holy Roman Empire, Versailles City. The heavily guarded city of Versailles was once the capital of art of the Holy Roman Empire. Those beautiful murals and statues of gods and angels all came from here. There were countless artists here. Every day they painstakingly portrayed the glorious images of the gods. However, all this sacred and solemn scene no longer existed. Instead, it was replaced by ferocious and terrifying hell beasts. Their roars could be heard in every corner of Versailles City. The former capital of art of the Holy Roman Empire had now become hell. Versailles City was the last springboard to attack Quebec. At this moment it was heavily guarded. The Burning Legion wasn't stupid. They had already deployed a large number of troops in Versailles City to guard this last fortress leading to Quebec City. Early in the morning, Versailles City was shrouded in a thick mist. On top of the sturdy city walls, 2 tall figures that didn't belong to this world appeared. Demon Xeric and Cthulhu King Ravens, 2 peerless powerhouses of the god realm, stood together as an invincible existence. The entire Versailles City had been turned into a military camp. Almost all of the Burning Legion's main forces were gathered here. Apart from Xeric and Ravens, the 2 god realm experts, there were also dozens of demons and countless Saint Realm experts. The devil Xeric, a mid-level god realm cultivator, wielded the power of destruction. At this moment, he was clad in thick black armor, and the sinister devil head on his chest was enough to send shivers down one's spine. Fiend God King Ravens was also a mid-level god realm. He wore a black chain mail, but his shoulder was embroidered with the Fiend God's honor emblem. His hornless face was as sinister as a devil. Xeric looked at the sky not far away and sneered. "I didn't expect these subplane natives to have the guts to attack us. Haha, I'm afraid this is the first time in the Burning Legion's history." The Burning Legion, with the strength of the main battle army, had conquered countless subplanes and rarely encountered any decent resistance. Compared to the subplanes, the difference between the main plane and the subplanes was too great, be it in terms of strength, resources, or powerhouses. Ravens chuckled, "Since these natives want to die, why should we stop them?" Xeric was surprised. "Oh," he said with a smile, "Lord Ravens, haven't you always opposed taking revenge on them? How come now? I didn't expect us to have the same opinion." Without waiting for Xeric to finish, Ravens waved his hand and said indifferently, "It's just that we have different priorities. We can't say that we have the same opinion. The grudge between you and me has long been decided. There's no need for pleasantries." Xeric didn't get angry. Instead, he grinned, "All right then, let's see who's better. In this battle, whoever kills more people will be the winner. It's a deal." Ravens nodded indifferently and agreed to Xeric's challenge. He raised an eyebrow. "Why aren't these natives here yet? I'm getting impatient." Xeric sneered. "This place called Versailles will be their final grave." While the 2 were talking, Ravens suddenly nodded and sneered. "They're here." At this time, a black cloud suddenly floated over from the distant sky. The black cloud carried a powerful aura, and it was accompanied by the sound of war drums. Boom! Boom! The first to arrive was the Scourge Church's undead army. They were all dressed in black and were completely wrapped in darkness. They were faintly discernible in the morning light, filled with a strange and mysterious aura. Following closely behind was the Orc army, mainly composed of wolf riders and wyvern knights. The current Orc army was led by Holy Wizard Morin. Their strength was far weaker than before, and they were practically vassals of the Scourge Church. The Elven army appeared to the east of Versailles. They were all dressed in armor engraved with exquisite patterns. The front row was made up of blood elf knights and druids with high defense. Behind them were archers and treants, as well as chariots with sharp crescent blades. The magical beasts were the last to arrive. Under the lead of the dark dragon Lafleur, countless magical beasts appeared on the east side of Versailles City in a grandiose manner. They constantly roared and bellowed, emitting beast-like sounds. The dragons Firth and Frigga both appeared on the battlefield. Frigga scanned the area with her spiritual sense, and her expression instantly changed. She could sense that there were dozens of existences not weaker than her. A few dozen, what a terrifying number! After all, there were less than 10 god domain experts on her side, including herself. Amongst them, the two figures standing on the city wall gave her an unfathomable feeling. Powerful. Terrifying. This was the true strength of the main army, and this was only the tip of the iceberg. Firth also sensed the two most powerful existences. At this moment, he was already regretting it. However, when he thought about it, there was no point in regretting it. Advancing forward was a dead end, and retreating would also lead to a bottomless abyss. Ron and Homelin stood in the middle of the Scourge Church's army. Ron's pitch-black eyes quietly scanned the foggy Versailles city. Although there didn't seem to be anything strange on the surface, Ron knew that almost all the experts of the Burning Legion had gathered in the city. Humans, undead, elves, beastmen, and magical beasts. Almost all of the strongest forces in the Noah continent had gathered here, surrounding Versailles City, so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Like the calm before the storm, the final decisive battle had finally arrived. Chapter 720. To the east was the allied army of magical beasts. To the west was the Scourge Church, the humans, and the remnants of the beastmen, and to the south was the elven army. Over 1 million soldiers were lined up in a row, densely packed like ants. The warriors of the Noah continent all had solemn expressions, as if they were facing death with equanimity. Versailles City was also filled with people. The powerful races and creatures of hell had long since made their preparations for battle. They were naturally adept at fighting, and before the battle had even begun, their intense killing intent had already ignited the horizon. A large energy vortex had already formed in the sky above Versailles City, emitting a powerful dark energy. Compared to a few days ago, the dark energy here was even denser. The first rays of morning light pierced through the clouds and warmly illuminated the earth, as if heralding the arrival of a cruel war. "It's time to make a move," Homelin said slowly, a bright light flashing in his turbid eyes. At this moment, Ron's eyes narrowed slightly, glancing at Vivian and lightly nodding. Seeing Ron's gesture, Vivian understood, her expression turning cold as she loudly shouted, "Pass down my order, prepare to attack. As long as the undead don't die, the natural disasters won't be extinguished." Following Vivian's order, the entire army of natural disasters began to move. They loudly chanted their slogan, their eyes blazing with fighting intent. Swish, 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 countless shiny weapons were unsheathed, followed by countless blood-red skull flags that were erected. The flags fluttered in the wind, emitting a strange, powerful, and terrifying aura. It was as if the powerful army from 100,000 years ago had once again been revived. Frigga, who was wearing women's light armor, stood in the midst of the large group of magical beasts, her eyes staring in the direction of the Scourge Church. At this moment, Frigga had already seen the short and thin figure among ordinary humans. He was wearing a black robe, his expression grave as he stood in the crowd. Beside him was the Scourge Church's great elder Homelin, as well as a group of powerhouses from the sacred domain of the Scourge Church. Frigga's feelings towards Ron were very complicated. She had always been curious about the youth, who had almost become her fiancé. She had once looked down on this little human, but she had never imagined that this human, who she had always looked down on and used as a shield, would become a legend in the Noah continent. He had become a true powerhouse of the divine realm before the age of 30. This point, not to mention magical beasts, even the dragons, who considered themselves the highest among magical beasts, could not do it. Generally speaking, it was already a genius to become a powerhouse of the sacred domain at this age, but it was rare to become a powerhouse of the divine realm. Beside Frigga stood an old man in a black robe. It was R.A. Firth. Like Frigga, he looked at Ron with a very complicated gaze. Even the astute R.A. Firth had to admit that he had indeed misjudged the young man who should have called himself grandfather. Now, everything he had shown was far beyond the magical beasts and even the dragons. Ron's mother, Besley, was also standing in the group of magical beasts. She looked at Ron with deep concern and a trace of pride. Since her father R.A. Firth lifted her confinement order, she would visit Ron several times a year. Every time, she would live in the Undercity for a period of time. The relationship between mother and son was very deep. Chieftain, the Scourge Church has finally made a move. Frigga calmed down and said to R.A. Firth next to her, "Should we also?" "Yes." R.A. Firth responded casually. His gaze revealed a trace of darkness. "We can't fall behind them. Let the Magical Beast Coalition attack immediately." As soon as R.A. Firth's voice fell, there were a few loud bangs. A powerful force spread out, and the earth shook slightly. "What's going on?" Ron clearly felt that something was amiss. His gaze focused, and a trace of astonishment flashed in his eyes as he looked at the city gate of Versailles. The city gate of Versailles was blasted open by a powerful force. Countless creatures of hell swarmed out of the city gate. They roared and bellowed, and viciously pounced on the allied forces of the Noah continent. They actually took the initiative to attack. R.A. Firth's eyes revealed a look of disbelief. Generally speaking, under the protection of solid city walls, the attacking side would be at a disadvantage. In order to break through a heavily guarded city, the attacking side would need to have more than double the number of soldiers of the defending side. But now, the Burning Legion that was supposed to be defending had given up on defense, and adopted a proactive attacking stance. It was unknown whether it was because they were too careless, or they simply looked down on the allied forces of the Noah continent. No matter what, the arrogant attitude of the Burning Legion had aroused the anger of the allied forces of the Noah continent. Counterattack immediately, and suppress the momentum of their attack. Ron's eyes revealed a bone-chilling coldness. Faced with the Burning Legion taking the initiative to attack, he brazenly gave the order to counterattack. Kill! With an earth-shattering roar, the undead army of the Scourge Church moved. Countless skeletons, undeads, ghouls, and other undead creatures crawled up from the ground. Their bodies were wrapped in black fog, and their two eyes flashed with a faint green light. They held weapons in their hands and constantly let out strange cries. Under the command of their master, they charged towards the Burning Legion. The skeletons, undeads, ghouls, and other low-level creatures formed a solid city wall as cannon fodder, and fiercely collided with the hell creatures that were charging over. Boom! Fresh blood splattered everywhere, and flesh and blood flew everywhere. Unlike the powerful hell creatures, the weak undead were instantly sent flying. Especially those skeleton warriors that were not very heavy and had extremely low defense. When they were hit by the powerful hell creatures, they fell apart and turned into a cloud of black fog that disappeared into the air. The Burning Legion quickly broke into the phalanx of the undead army, wantonly slaughtering them. One by one, the undead creatures fell into a pool of blood, and the summoned undead creatures also turned into black smoke and disappeared. Kill! The undead had started fighting, and the allied army of magical beasts was not willing to be left behind. The magical beasts in human form all transformed, turning into their original forms. The ones charging at the front were a group of elite war elephants and armored rhinoceroses with thick skin and thick flesh. Unlike the undead creatures with low defense, these powerful magical beasts knocked the hell creatures off their feet and started fighting. The elves also launched an attack, and countless arrows with magic flew towards the top of the city wall. In an instant, arrows fell from the city of Versailles like rain. At this moment, the Death Knight Shea raised the longsword in her hand, her snow-white hair fluttering in the wind. A pair of crimson-red eyes flashed with a terrifying light. Attack, undead! For the will of the Death God! For the glory of the Calamity! Kill! The flames on the body of the nightmare beast that Shea was riding on burned brightly. It spread out its four hooves and took the lead to charge out. Countless death knights and undead swordsmen followed closely behind. The necromancers and necromancers began to chant in a low voice, and countless souls gathered on the battlefield. Kill, kill, kill! Shea's eyes were red with bloodlust. Under her sword, countless hell creatures had died. Her body was already covered in fresh blood, but it was not clear whether it was hers or the enemy's. The evil halo had already been activated, and the undead creatures under the halo were all protected. Their attack, defense, and especially their recovery speed increased, and the undead's combat strength was greatly enhanced. They fought against the Burning Legion. Swish, swish, swish. The druid transformed into a giant bear and easily broke into the Burning Legion's battle formation. Together with the huntress who was riding on a black panther, they began a desperate battle. Behind them were the green elves who had transformed into tree demons. They were adept at using life magic such as the Thorny Halo, Poison Spear, and Dispel. The Poison Spear, in particular, would cause continuous poison damage to the enemy after hitting it. It could also slow down the enemy's movement and attack speed. Like the druids, they were a powerful unit of the elven race. At this moment, there was a commotion in Versailles City. Countless fiery red threads rose into the air and drew beautiful arcs in the air. What is this? An undead swordsman from the Scourge Church stared at the fiery red threads in the air with his mouth agape. Not good, it's a magic attack. Activate your defense. Another human soldier yelled. On the chaotic battlefield, it was impossible to dodge a magic attack from all directions. The only choice was to activate defense and endure it. Bang, bang, one by one, circles of light lit up. The paladins had activated their halo skills. Boom, 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 countless fireballs landed on the allied army's formation, causing earth-shattering explosions. Sparks flew everywhere, and the allied army's soldiers who were hit by the fireballs suffered severe magic damage. The weaker ones were burned alive on the spot. This was the fire elemental magic released by the Marg and Fire Elves. The Rain of Fire, released by the Fire Elves, was comparable to a forbidden spell. The large-scale magic attack of the Burning Legion still caused damage to the allied army of the Noah continent. Of course, the allied army of the Noah continent also retaliated. Countless magic attacks were launched at the top of Versailles City. Ron's eyes were fixed on the battlefield. It was only a battle between the low and mid-level soldiers. It was not the time for a god-level expert like him to make a move. After all, the demons of the Burning Legion had yet to appear. Undine of the Elves, R.A. Firth of the Beasts, and Frigga of the Beasts were the same. The Burning Legion's strength is very well-rounded, as expected of the main army of the Infernal Continent. Homelin said slowly. I think, even if we gather the strongest forces of the Noah continent, we may not be their match. Yes. Ron nodded with a sullen face and sighed softly. I know, Grandpa Homelin, but we have no other choice. Whether to choose to live in humiliation or to choose to die with dignity, this has been a difficult question since ancient times. Homelin smiled with difficulty. But I believe that Ron, you already have an answer in your heart. Ron nodded. He did not deny this point. He had already experienced the strength of the Burning Legion. However, if the King of Hell, Sauron, was resurrected, it would be a disaster worse than an invasion to the entire Noah continent. Perhaps the entire Noah continent would be destroyed. What made Ron feel strange was that, as the manager of the Noah continent, Lord Noah did not appear. Ron went to look for him a few times but could not find him. Could it be that he no longer cared about the matters of the Noah continent? After stepping into the divine domain, Ron felt that Lord Noah's strength was unfathomable. It was far above his own, so strong that he felt that he could not see through it. Ron believed that if Lord Noah appeared, perhaps the Burning Legion would not be so arrogant. At this time, the Burning Legion's sacred domain powerhouses finally appeared. With the Cthulhu King, Hellfire, trolls, and other sacred domain beings as representatives, they launched an attack on the Noah continent's allied forces. Countless domains were opened. The battle between the sacred domain powerhouses caused the space to tremble. The sacred domain powerhouses of the Noah continent's allied forces also joined the battle, fighting against the Burning Legion's sacred domain powerhouses. The aerial battle in the sky was also intense. Imps against gargoyles, hippogriffs against fire elves, abyssal skeletal dragons against hellfire phoenixes. The roars of magical beasts and undead creatures could be heard constantly in the sky. Occasionally, there would be figures covered in flames falling down. Chapter 7:21. The intense battle continued. Magic, combat energy, souls all flew in the wind, accompanied by the deafening sounds of killing and the roars of magical beasts. Noah's Alliance army and the Burning Legion had sent in a large number of troops, and countless creatures died in the charge. Xeric and ravens stood on the city wall and watched as countless flying magical beasts flew over their heads. At this moment they still did not move, and their expressions were very ugly. These lowly natives are really stubborn. Xeric gritted his teeth, and a trace of viciousness flashed in his eyes. It seems that we still underestimated them. Ravens nodded slightly. Her Highness' order is to not allow these natives to take another step forward. Xeric, you should be able to do this, of course. Xeric grinned. We still have our strongest troops that haven't moved out yet. Without anyone noticing, the fierce battle had already reached noon. The huge battlefield was still in a stalemate, and the road hundreds of meters away from Versailles City had become a bloody death zone. The strong were covered in wounds, and the weak died on the spot. Magic exploded in the sky, and countless swords danced on the ground. From time to time, there would be one or two loud bangs, causing the ground to shake. This was the great destruction caused by the powerful skills released by the strong. Blood covered the feet of the warriors on both sides. Every step they took, they would step on an incomplete corpse. The most terrifying thing was that these corpses would suddenly get up, giving people a shock. The battle in the sacred domain had already begun, and only the strong people in the divine realm were still biding their time. Everyone was patient and suffering. At this moment, the elven high priestess Undine's eyes narrowed slightly. "They're moving." In an instant, all the living beings present felt a suffocating aura suddenly spread out. The atmosphere of the entire battlefield suddenly changed. It was filled with a strong aura of killing intent. It was as if a heavy stone was pressing down on their hearts. Fear unwittingly spread through them. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Dozens of black figures appeared in Versailles City. These figures were wearing black and evil armor, and they had black wings on their back. Without exception, they had long and sharp horns on their heads, and even their chins had horns. Their faces were like venomous snakes, and they looked very ferocious and ferocious. Demons. The Burning Legion's demon army had finally appeared. There were dozens of demons, but they were also dozens of divine realm powerhouses. These divine realm powerhouses all had decent strength. Let's go. It's our turn. At this moment, Ron heard Homelin's voice. He gripped the bone staff in his hand tightly, and he was already prepared for battle. A sneer appeared on Ron's face as the two of them flew into the air like smoke. Firth Ra and Frigga looked at each other, and they also rose and flew into the air. Ron glanced at them. Apart from Ra, Firth Ra, Frigga, Undine, and Kay's grandfather Hao Qin, there were also two divine realm magical beasts that he did not recognize. Apart from the deadly Jia, all the divine realm powerhouses of the Noah continent had basically arrived. They were divided into two groups, and they faced off against the Burning Legion's divine realm demons from afar. However, even so, there were only 8 divine realm powerhouses on the Noah continent. Compared to the dozens of demons on the other side, the difference in numbers was too great. Hee, you're finally here. At this moment, the leader of the demons finally spoke. He looked at everyone and smiled. Let me introduce myself. I'm Xeric, and he's Ravens, he then paused. I'm under Princess Sophia's orders to exterminate you. After the demon called Xeric spoke, his pair of venomous eyes stared coldly at everyone. No one spoke. After all, the pressure from the dozens of demons on the other side was too great. Is that so? In the end, it was Ron who spoke up. He said coldly, with just you? With just us? Isn't that enough? The demon Xeric revealed a bright smile. Don't lie to yourself. You natives are no match for our main army. Even the number of divine realm powerhouses you have is far less than us. So, the only outcome for you is death. Ravens continued. The evil god's body trembled slightly due to his excitement. It had been a long time since he had personally fought in a high position. But numbers don't mean anything, Ron said coldly. This is a battle between us, a stage for the divine realm powerhouses. Although they were at a disadvantage in numbers and their aura was suppressed, Ron was not willing to be at a disadvantage. If they were discouraged now, there was no need to fight the rest of the battle. Ron was very clear on this point. Is that so? Then I hope you'll still be as stubborn as you are now when you die. Xeric laughed loudly. In the midst of his laughter there was a boom, as the black flames on his body flared up. A powerful aura of destruction accompanied the black flames and filled every corner of the surroundings. The demons also activated their powers of destruction at the same time. In an instant, the powerhouses of the Noah continent were surrounded by dozens of demons burning with black flames. The expressions of the powerhouses of the Noah continent changed slightly. Let's fight. Ron clenched his fists tightly, his eyes burning with fighting spirit. This is a stage for us divine realm powerhouses. Boom! At this moment, the Calamity Church's main formation suddenly changed. A tall iceberg slowly rose into the air. A powerful icy aura spread out, as though the earth was covered in ice and snow. In an instant, the surrounding temperature dropped by several dozen degrees. Roar, 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 accompanied by earth-shattering roars, a head as large as a house drilled out of the iceberg. Its might shook the heavens and earth, causing countless shards of ice to fall. Frost dragons were the most powerful existences among undead creatures. One of them was enough to destroy a city or a country. However, 4 of them had appeared at this moment. 4 heads emerged from the iceberg, and 8 pairs of bony wings flap. A powerful airflow spread out like a storm. 4 heavy bodies slowly rose into the air like elegant nobles, emitting a powerful icy aura. The cold air they exhaled from their mouths instantly froze into solid ice. Homelin quietly looked at the 4 giant frost dragons roaming in the sky. At this moment, his heart was filled with admiration. With his strength, summoning a single frost dragon was already his limit. After all, summoning a frost dragon consumed a large amount of soul energy. Even a divine Magus necromancer would not be able to bear it. Of course, summoning a frost dragon to assist in battle would also be of great help to a divine magus necromancer. However, Ron had summoned 3 at once. What did that mean? It meant that Ron's strength had already far surpassed his mentor, Homelin. Looking at the powerful Ron, Homelin only had gratification in his eyes. Every mentor hoped that their students could achieve greater things than them. Moreover, Homelin and Ron did not have a simple master-disciple relationship. It was more of a kinship connected by blood. In Homelin's heart, Ron had long been like his own grandson. Roar, Firth of the Dragons was not willing to be negligent. He let out a wild roar, and his figure shot into the air like an arrow. Immediately after, he began to transform. Not long later, a huge body that was not inferior to a frost dragon appeared on the battlefield. It was a huge dark dragon, Firth's true body. It was covered in black scales that reflected the sunlight. There were 4 huge horns on its head that pierced into the sky like sharp swords, emitting a terrifying dark aura. At the same time, Frigga also began to transform and entered battle mode. Ron also noticed the dragons. To be honest, it was his first time seeing Frigga in her true form. The fairy dragon was snow white all over. There were no scales on her body, and her skin was as smooth as silk. She was as beautiful as a fairy. Unlike the huge dark dragon, Frigga in her fairy dragon form was much smaller than her human form. The beautiful little white dragon flapped her wings and landed on the dark dragon Firth's head. Her watery eyes shot out a cold gaze, and the elemental aura on her body was not inferior to Firth's. Kill! At Xeric's command, dozens of demons shot out like arrows. They held all kinds of weapons and pounced on the group with bared fangs and brandished claws. Go! Ron pointed with his finger, and 3 frost dragons quickly met them, opening the curtains to a battle in the divine territory. Boom, boom, boom. Although the battle took place in the sky, the dozens of divine territory powerhouses' battle still caused the space to tremble. Destructive power, soul power, and elemental power intertwined, forming a vacuum of death in the space of dozens of miles. The powerful energy even made the sun in the sky pale in comparison. Go for it. You must defeat them. Young Master is invincible. Go for it, High Priest. The battle below did not stop, but they were cheering for the powerhouses on their side in their hearts. However, they also understood that with such a disparity in strength, the chances of victory were slim. Big Sister Shea, they've started to attack. Kadena stopped moving. She quietly looked at Ron's figure in the sky, her face full of worry. Yes. Do you think Ron can defeat them? Kadena sighed and asked. In fact, she already had the answer in her heart. She just wanted to gain some confidence from Shea. I don't know. Shea's answer was very straightforward. She casually looked up at the sky and sighed. Kadena, do your own thing. A battle between divine territories is not something we can interfere in. Morin, who was beside her, sighed silently. If her grandfather had not died, he would have appeared on the battlefield of Versailles. Unfortunately, Morin closed her eyes in pain. Icebound 1,000 miles. The frost dragon let out a loud roar, and a powerful, cold aura instantly spread out, freezing all the surrounding demons in an instant. Aging. Chapter 7:22. Boom, boom, boom. Ron went all out. He waved the dragon bone staff in his hand, and countless souls surged out. The souls flying in the air were like ferocious magic beasts, revealing their sharp claws and fangs. 3 frost dragons roamed in the air, constantly breathing out powerful ice dragon breath. Wherever the dragon breath went, everything would turn into ice sculptures. Undead calamity. Ron activated a curse with one hand and a domain with the other, bursting out with powerful fighting strength, firmly holding back dozens of evil demons. At this moment, Ron had become the strongest output of power. All this made the powerhouses of the Noah continent dumbstruck. Heavens! Is this still the Ron we know? When did he have such powerful fighting strength? We can't fall behind, we can't be compared to a human. We are magic beasts, noble magic beasts, Raphael roared. He held his breath and opened his mouth to spit out a black flame dragon breath that wrapped around an abyss demon. That abyss demon was burned by the black flame dragon breath that was full of strong corrosiveness and cried for its parents. Frigga was not willing to fall behind. Although her body was countless times smaller than Aerfirth, she was not weak at all. Fairy dragons were the strongest elemental creatures, and also the most perfect elemental controller. Wind, lightning, water, fire, earth, Guangming, darkness, all kinds of elemental magic were at their fingertip. The release of each elemental magic would cause the evil demons to scream. In particular, the forbidden spells that covered the sky and covered the earth rained down on the demons as if they were free. Being a magician was a profession that was so powerful that it gave people headache. In particular, a magician who could release a full range of magic was an even more terrifying existence. Kay's grandfather, Hao Qin, turned into a huge Beaumont beast. Kay paled in comparison to him. His huge body brought with it terrifying power. Every step he took caused the earth to tremble. Huge fleshy fists and terrifying strength. The evil demons did not dare to block each of Hao Qin's punches. Life High Priestess Undine was like a summoner. She kept summoning tall treants, withered tree warriors, to tangle with the evil demons and then use life magic to attack. In the sky and on the ground, the powerhouses of the Noah continent engaged in a chaotic battle with the evil demons. However, the most eye-catching person in this battle was Ron. Pung! A demon used teleportation to quickly get close to Ron. He held a huge black scythe in his hand and attacked Ron fiercely. Go to hell, lowly native. No matter how you struggle, you are nothing more than a worm in my hands. The scythe of destruction turned into a crescent moon, and a powerful force that could break through the void erupted in an instant. The demon was fast, but Ron was faster. The moment the scythe of destruction reached him, Ron's body turned into a black mist and dodged the demon's attack. You're the one who's going to die. Ron's body quickly condensed behind the evil demon. He sneered and stretched out his left hand. Soul Devour. Ron's left and right hand turned into countless light shadows that wrapped around the evil demon's body like a chain. Then, a violent soul energy surged out. No, the demon's expression changed drastically. He felt as if his soul was being forcefully extracted by something. It was an irresistible and terrifying power. The feeling of his soul being forcefully extracted was excruciating to the point of unbearable pain. Ron's control of the soul energy had reached an extremely precise level. He also had a deeper understanding of the soul. In just an instant, the evil demon that was captured by Ron had his eyes rolled back. His body was trembling, and his life force was declining rapidly. Not good, Isuel is going to be killed. Let's go help him. The evil demons saw that the situation was not good and immediately rushed to save Isuel. Frost Nova. Ron waved his hand, and a powerful ice energy exploded. A powerful force field formed in the space around him. All the evil demons within the range of this force field were frozen. At this moment, Ron had extracted the last bit of the evil demon's soul energy. The unlucky evil demon fell down with endless hatred. What? You killed him? After breaking free from the frozen state with great difficulty, the demons were greatly alarmed. They stared at Ron and said fiercely. Facing Ron's strange necromancy magic and terrifying soul power, they didn't dare to step forward. Ron smiled. It was not the first time he killed an evil demon. He did not feel anything. It's your turn soon. Ron sneered. He waved his hand like a commander commanding thousands of soldiers. 3 frost dragons flew past him and pounced on the evil demons. Gotcha! A sound was heard. One of the frost dragons opened its mouth and bit off an evil demon's arm. In just one exchange, Ron killed an evil demon and heavily injured the rest. This was no longer a battle. It was a massacre. That was the slaughter of the weak by a higher-level powerhouse. It was no wonder that everyone was shocked by Ron's powerful strength. As they spoke, Ron's frost dragon killed another one. Those were living God realm powerhouses, but they were slaughtered by Ron like pigs, dogs, and chickens. Demon corpses kept falling from the sky. They were either killed by the frost dragons summoned by Ron, or their souls were sucked dry by Ron, turning them into walking corpses. Although they were not dead yet, they were almost dead. Ron's frost dragons were much stronger than Homeland's. Long live, young master is mighty, kill these bastards. Ron displayed his invincible might. His powerful fighting strength made the other powerhouses of the Noah continent blush with shame. The Scourge Church's followers cheered in excitement. Their eyes were filled with a madness that did not belong to their nature. Faith was a kind of crazy worship. At this moment, Ron's name in their hearts was equivalent to invincibility. How could he be so strong? Frigga was stunned. Ron's strength far exceeded her imagination. With her strength, it was not impossible for her to kill an evil demon, but she would have to pay a huge price for it. She was not like Ron, who could do it so easily. Those powerful and terrifying evil demons were like chickens in front of him. At this moment, Frigga looked at Ron with eyes full of jealousy. This guy Ron, she really didn't know how he cultivated. He was so young, but he was a genius whose cultivation speed was even faster than the noblest dragons. This guy, Xeric was stupefied. He did not expect Ron's strength to reach such a level. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 evil demons were either dead or injured. The remaining evil demons were so frightened by Ron's terrifying strength that they did not dare to step forward. Mid-level God Realm. Raven's face darkened. That's right, it's this necromancer. Xeric said, the other's strength is very average, only this necromancer is the strongest. He seems very young? Not even 30 years old. Raven said. His eyes were fixed on Ron, who was fighting with the evil demons, unmoving. Genius. Just as Frigga thought, Xeric and Ravens were also filled with jealousy towards Ron. This human was many times younger than them, yet he possessed strength that was not inferior to them. It was no wonder they were jealous. However, other than jealousy, there was also a trace of cold killing intent in their eyes. Looks like we can't stay idle. Xeric and Ravens exchanged a glance. In an instant, both of them understood each other's thoughts. This human must not be allowed to live. Kill! Chapter 723. Kacha, a sound was heard. Ron's spear of death pierced through a devil's skull. The devil's eyes were wide open with hatred and jealousy as its body fell limply to the ground. Humph! Ron sneered. He shifted the dragon bone staff to his left hand, then reached out with his right hand. A faint green energy seeped out from his palm. At this time, a strange protrusion appeared on the devil's forehead, slowly separating from its body. It was a colorless, translucent devil's soul. Similar to the dead devil, its face was filled with hatred and jealousy. The only difference was that within the hatred, there was also a strong sense of fear. Ron opened his mouth and swallowed the devil's soul. Just like the other devil's souls, the devil's soul entered Ron's soul ring space and was ground to dust by the soul converter, turning into the purest form of soul force. Ron's soul sea quickly filled up. His faint soul face revealed a joyful expression. At the same time, Ron's soul force was growing at a rapid pace. After absorbing the soul force of more than a dozen God Realm devils, Ron's soul force had grown tremendously, but this growth was far from satisfying Ron's expectations. From this, one could see that the gap between mid-level God Realm and high-level God Realm was unreachable. Sure enough, mid-level God Realm and above requires so much soul force? Seeing this, Ron sucked in a breath of cold air. The amount of soul force required to advance to high-level God realm was too terrifying. According to his estimation, if he cultivated alone, even if he had 100,000 years, or even 200,000 years, he still wouldn't be able to take another step forward. If it weren't for the soul ring, this heaven-defying existence, even with Ron's talent and hard work, there was no way he could step into God realm in a short 20 years. Ron was even more curious about the soul ring's origin. Right at this time, Ron suddenly felt his heart palpitating. Looking up, a sword light flashed, and a giant black sword slammed down on him with the momentum of Mount Tai. Ron's reaction was fast, retreating swiftly, but in the next second, an even bigger figure blocked his path. It was a devil wielding a giant black scythe. The two of them, one in front and one behind, blocked his path of retreat. Ron looked at them coldly. These two were from two of the most powerful infernal races in the Burning Legion. One was the Cthulhu King Ravens, and the other was the Overlord Demon Xeric. Xeric looked at Ron carefully and grinned. "Kid, I didn't expect you to be so strong. But now that you've met me, it's your time to die." Ravens, on the other hand, didn't say a word and directly attacked with his sword. The fierce battle raged once again. This time, it was the mid-level God Realm Cthulhu King and Devil Lord Xeric who were battling Ron. "Frost Dragon, show yourself." Ron's eyes were brimming with killing intent. Facing two mid-level God Realm Masters' attacks, even he felt a great pressure. With a wave of his hand, he summoned the Frost Dragon. A huge hexagram appeared in the sky, as if a cave had been forcibly opened in the void, emitting a chilling aura. In an instant, a huge white figure poked its head out of the cave. One head, two heads, three heads. A total of 12 frost dragons appeared in the sky, their thunderous roars reverberated throughout the land. The frost dragons spread open their half-rotted skeletal wings, their enormous bodies blotting out the sun. "Wah, frost dragons, heavens, so many, young lord is so powerful. With so many frost WRMs, even the sturdiest fortress would be breached? Young lord is invincible." The frigid aura of the frost dragon couldn't be concealed no matter how hard they tried. The members of the Calamity Church couldn't help but exclaim in admiration while shivering from the cold. Cheers and battle cries resounded throughout the battlefield. Homelin stood on the head of a frost dragon, shaking his head with a wry smile. This guy Ron was too heaven-defying. He could only summon one frost dragon, but he could summon more than 10 in one go. With this number, on top of the frost dragon's terrifying strength, they could probably drown their enemies to death. In the face of so many frost dragons, even someone as strong as Ravens and Xeric could not help but have a slight change in expression. Frost dragons were the kings of undead creatures. Although they were not afraid of these things with their strength, they still felt a little apprehensive in the face of a dozen powerful frost dragons. Ignore those frost dragons, kill the summoner first. A trace of killing intent flashed in Raven's eyes. He bellowed, brandishing his black greatsword, attacking Ron. Xeric also understood. His figure flickered, disappearing into thin air. Hee, can you guys find me?" Ron let out a long laugh. His body turned into a phantom and gradually disappeared. After Ron's figure disappeared, Ravens and Xeric lost their target. At this moment, the 12 frost dragons were already pouncing toward them. "Damn it!" Ravens cursed fiercely. At this moment, an extremely powerful icy dragon breath was already heading toward him. Boom! Boom! The terrifying power of the 12 frost dragons caused the sky to change color. The entire battlefield seemed to be shrouded in a layer of frost. The biting cold wind on the ground made it seem like winter had arrived. Frigga, R.A. Firth, and the others were already numb from shock. Heavens! Just how much terrifying strength did Ron still have hidden in his body? Just these 12 frost dragons were enough for him to stand at the peak of the Noah continent. The peak of the Noah continent. This position had always been held by the dragons. Among them, the chief of the dragons, R.A. Firth, had held this position for tens of thousands of years. Lord Patriarch Ron he. Frigga opened her mouth, but no words came out. Thinking of this human youth that she once looked down on, her heart was filled with regret. The current him was already at the peak of the Noah continent. All God Realm Masters were overshadowed by his halo. Frigga wasn't the only one feeling regret. The chief of the dragons, R.A. Firth, was also feeling regret. His opponent was a dual-wielding devil with a mere early God Realm strength, yet he was already exhausted. At this moment, R.A. Firth had a new understanding of Ron's strength. He had to admit that this weak little human, the one he once regarded as a disgrace, Ron, had become the strongest person on the Noah continent. While R.A. Firth lamented the decline of the dragon's strength, he was also secretly glad that the strongest God Realm Master on the Noah continent was his own grandson. However, would this grandson of his forgive him? R.A. Firth had no confidence in his heart. No need to say any more, let's deal with the matter at hand first. R.A. Firth roared, then opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of black flame dragon breath. Sure enough, your prophecy came true. Ron, he really became the strongest person on the Noah continent. On a protruding rock on the battlefield, Direwolf King D-Lin stood quietly. She raised her beautiful eyes, quietly looking at the sky. At this moment, she recalled Taurora's last words. How did that dumb guy become so powerful? What? You said that dumb guy became so powerful? That's right, the moment I saw him, I felt that his strength was a little strange. His fighting style also felt familiar, so I used the prophecy technique. Guess what I saw? What did you see? I saw his future. His achievements in the future will be incomparably glorious. His glory will be as dazzling as the sun. His glory will spread across the entire continent. He will stand at the peak of the Noah continent, becoming the strongest person. I don't believe it. It's up to you to believe it or not. Thinking about her deceased lover, D-Lin's eyes became moist. She gently wiped away the tears at the corner of her eyes and looked up at the short and thin figure in the sky. She revealed a knowing smile. Don't worry. I am already his wife. Thank you for your prophecy. I love him very much, and I hope to be with him forever. D-Lin said in her heart. She took a deep breath, and her eyes regained their calmness. She transformed into the moon-devouring heavenly wolf and let out a low growl, then pounced on the succubus closest to her. Chapter 724. The ones who were the most oppressed right now were undoubtedly the Cthulhu King Ravens and the Demon Lord Xeric. They were struggling bitterly against the 12 Frost Dragons, but they couldn't find any trace of Ron. That necromancer seemed to have vanished into thin air, and even their spiritual senses couldn't lock onto his figure. Ron was fighting 1 against 2, and he even had a few demons with him, but he was not at a disadvantage at all. On the contrary, the entire battlefield seemed to be under his control. The frost dragons in the sky, the skeletons and undead creatures on the ground, the calamity domain, the plague and so on were all created by his power. It could be said that Ron alone was equivalent to an army. Under Ron's powerful battle prowess, the Burning Legion's attack collapsed as the sea of undead creatures drowned the hell creatures. Damn it! Why does this fellow summon an endless number of undead creatures? Xeric cursed as he attacked. He was annoyed by the undead creatures that Ron kept summoning. He had just exterminated a wave of gargoyles, and in the blink of an eye, he summoned another few hundred gargoyles. Necromancers in battle were least afraid of numbers. When necromancers reached the divine realm, their strength would increase by leaps and bounds. The battle was still ongoing. Versailles City, which was in the middle of the battlefield, had already been reduced to ruins. Half of the city walls had already collapsed, and could no longer be used as a defense. The allied forces of the Scourge Church and the continent of Noah had successfully broken into the city. A brutal street battle had begun, and neither side was willing to take a step back. Ha! Ravens roared as he released a powerful battle technique. His black greatsword slashed out a wave of air, injuring a frost dragon. Damned undead, what kind of hero are you hiding? Come out if you have the guts. At this moment, Ravens was covered in injuries. His armor was covered in white ice shards, and his movements were greatly affected. Xeric was not much better off. Haha, I've only summoned 12 frost dragons. You can't hold on any more? Ron laughed. His voice seemed to come from the distant horizon. If that's the case, then die. The summoned hexagram once again appeared in the sky. Ron summoned another 12 frost dragons. A total of 24 frost dragons appeared in the sky, surrounding the entire Versailles city so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. With the appearance of 24 frost colossal dragons, their numbers alone were enough to crush everything. Quantity brought about a qualitative leap. At this moment, Ravens and Xeric finally understood the true terror of necromancers. Their faces were filled with fear. The powerful Frost WRMS had involved all the demons in the battle with the Frost WRMS, and the other God Realm powerhouses of the Noah continent had instead become foils. Undead creatures that blotted out the sky and covered the earth emerged from the ground one after another. It was as if there was no end to them. The periphery of Versailles City had already become a sea of undead. The millions of undead creatures were like a tide as they attacked wave after wave. With the support of Plague, Evil Halo, and various other skills, the undead creatures were like tigers that had grown wings. They drowned the burning legions hell creatures. The number of undead creatures far exceeded their imagination. They charged forward without fear of death. Even if their bodies were cut in half, they still continued to crawl forward. The hell creatures were finally afraid. The seemingly endless numbers gave them great psychological pressure. The scales of victory began to tilt towards the side of the continent of Noah continent. Charge! Brothers! Kill these damned invaders! Kill! Kill! On the battlefield, the experts of the continent of Noah also saw this. Their morale soared and they erupted with a powerful battle strength. Countless domains spread out in an instant. Under the attacks of the Noah continent's experts led by Dark Dragon R.A. Firth, the hell creatures fell one after another. Stepping on the corpses of the burning legion, the continent of Noah continent's army advanced step by step. The flames of war burned fiercely. Countless corpses littered the ground. Versailles City turned into a sea of blood and fire. The burning legion's hell creatures fled in all directions. At this moment, they understood what it meant to be defeated like a landslide. Huff, huff, Ravens panted heavily, his pair of blood-red eyes staring fixedly at Ron. His shoulder was hit and blood flowed out like a fountain. He was in a sorry state. The other God Realm expert, Xeric, looked better than Ravens, but that was only on the surface. In truth, his injuries were more serious. His injuries were in the deepest part of his soul. At this moment, the two of them finally realized a terrifying fact. This human in front of them who looked less than 30 years old was far stronger than they had imagined. No wonder so many devils died in his hands, because this human's strength was enough to kill them in seconds. At this time, a black fog slowly emerged in front of Ravens and Xeric. Ron's thin figure stood on top of a giant ice dragon head. His pitch-black eyes stared coldly at them as if he was looking at a group of dead people. Ravens and Xeric both took a step back. They exchanged a glance, seeing the fear in each other's eyes. This black-haired young man in front of them was too terrifying. There were only 7 devils left around the two of them, but they had lost the courage to resist, not daring to take a step forward. Ron had taken complete control of the situation. How is it? Are you prepared to die? Ron waved the dragon bone staff. A faint cyan soul force slowly seeped out. Who are you? Ravens forcefully suppressed the fear in his heart. Could it be you're an expert from the undead plane? No, Ron shook his head. I've never been to the undead plane. I'm a human born and bred in the Noah continent. Impossible, Xeric screamed hysterically as if he had gone mad. Human? How can a lowly human reach such a stage? You're not a human, definitely not. You're a higher race from the undead plane. The human race existed in other secondary planes and the undead plane. In the eyes of the higher races, the human race had always been synonymous with inferiority. Are you done? Ron became impatient and said coldly, If you're done, you can die. As soon as he finished speaking, Ron waved his bone staff, and the dozen or so frost dragons behind him suddenly pounced forward. They opened their dark mouths wide and spat out cold dragon breaths in unison. Boom, boom, boom. The powerful dragon breath froze Xeric's huge body in an instant, making him unable to move. Just as Xeric was about to struggle, his eyes suddenly widened. Extreme fear appeared on his face. A black bone spear was flying towards him at extreme speed. In his current state, Xeric could not dodge it at all. No. Don't, Xeric screamed in terror. He could clearly feel the divine aura on the black bone spear. The divine power of death. Crack. The spear of death easily pierced through Xeric's head. His soul was instantly extracted and involuntarily flew towards Ron. Xeric's face was filled with endless hatred and unwillingness. His huge body slowly fell down. You killed him? Ravens trembled all over. He looked at Ron as if he had seen a ghost. This old opponent of his, who had fought with Princess Sophia for tens of thousands of years, was as weak as a child in front of this human. Purring bang. Ravens did not even look back. His body turned into a ray of light and instantly fled. He wanted to escape as far away as possible. That human necromancer was too terrifying. Do you think you can escape? Ron chuckled. He slowly raised his hand and the spear of death condensed once more. Die! Ron's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He moved the spear of death and was about to throw it out. Rumble! At this moment, a throbbing sound came from afar. It was like thunder in the distant sky, heavily striking everyone's heart. What? Ron suddenly stopped. His eyes opened wide in an instant, revealing an intense look of disbelief. He stood there in a daze, not even caring about Raven's escape. It was not just Ron. Everyone on the battlefield was stunned. Without exception, their eyes were filled with intense fear. What kind of power is this? Frigga took a step back. Her petite body trembled slightly. Her little tail swayed lightly as if to hide the uneasiness in her heart. What terrifying power! Is there such a powerful force in this world? Firth gritted his teeth. His eyes were filled with fear. It stopped. Everyone's movements stopped. The millions of people on the battlefield were silent. They were all shocked by this powerful force. Ron quietly stopped in the sky, still maintaining the posture of throwing the spear of death. However, the relaxed look on his face was replaced by seriousness. Ron slowly withdrew his hand and stared into the distance. Powerful. Terrifying. The power coming from afar seemed to have absorbed the entire area. The thick clouds were constantly moving in that direction like the wind. That was the direction of Quebec City. What kind of power was this? So powerful? Ron clenched his fist. His body trembled slightly. The strength of this power was far beyond his imagination. Could it be the power of God? Only a true God could possess such a vast and boundless power. This power was enough to make the entire continent of Noah tremble. Who was it? Who could possess such a powerful force? Where did he come from? The terrifying power coming from Quebec City was filled with an intense aura of destruction and a trace of slaughter. It intimidated everyone so much that they didn't dare to move. Ron, do you feel it? Shea rode on the back of the nightmare beast and sent a spiritual message to Ron. I already feel it. Chapter 7:25. The fierce battle in Versailles City was nearing its end. The demons with god-level strength had either died or fled. With Ron, the demon god, there was no longer any desire to continue fighting. Under the attack of the allied forces of the Noah continent, the Burning Legion's forces in Versailles City immediately collapsed. Only sporadic resistance was left, and the allied forces occupied Versailles City. In this battle, the Burning Legion suffered the greatest defeat in the history of the Noah continent. The achievements of the allied forces of the Noah continent were enough to be recorded in the annals of history. Of course, all of this was inseparable from Ron's strength and hard work. It could be said that without Ron, the outcome of this battle would have been completely different. Ron did not pursue the fleeing demons. His attention was firmly attracted by the terrifying power from Quebec City. He slowly landed on the ground. At this moment, Versailles City had already become a scene of ruins. There were burning flames and corpses everywhere. Not far away, smoke rose slowly. From time to time, there were explosions and shouts of killing, indicating that the battle was not completely over. Ron, as soon as Ron landed, a group of people surrounded him from afar. Cadena, Aurora, Lynn, Shea, and the other girls surrounded Ron. Their eyes were filled with concern, and at the same time, they were filled with admiration for their husband. In the Scourge Church, Homelin, Vivian, and the others also gathered around to congratulate Ron. In the crowd, they discovered Lombard. At this moment, although he was a little tired, he was still full of energy. Ron smiled and greeted him. "Brother Lombard, are you all right?" Lombard slapped his thigh excitedly. It's just a small injury, nothing serious. But you, Ron, you've made us humans proud. In the history of the Noah continent, humans had always been looked down upon by the beastmen, elves, magic beasts, and other higher races. Because there were no God's domain powerhouses, humans' right to speak had never been valued. It was only after Ron had advanced to God's domain that this point changed. The higher races of the Noah continent began to look at these races that had been looked down upon for thousands of years as equals. Yes, humans were not born with great strength, nor did they have outstanding magical talent. However, they were hardworking, good at learning and imitating. They had a tenacious will and a spirit of sacrifice. They were not inferior to other races. Lombard, who often went on missions outside, knew this very well. He had once joined a Sacred Domain powerhouse team made up of other races, but that team made it clear that they did not accept humans. Ron only smiled faintly at Lombard's praise. "Young master." Vivian walked forward and gave Ron a brief report of the casualties in the Battle of Versailles. 3 new Sacred Domain powerhouses died in battle. Calamity Academy's instructor Etarian died in battle, and Vivian's expression was filled with sadness. To the Rising Scourge Church, every one of them was a treasure. Their deaths were a great loss to the Scourge Church. Everyone's hearts were heavy as they listened to the names. Ron listened quietly. Although they had achieved victory in the Battle of Versailles, the price they had paid was far beyond his imagination. This was especially true for the Calamity Academy's instructors and students. They should have been quietly attending classes in the academy, teaching and learning, immersing themselves in the profound mysteries of necromancy magic, swimming in the sea of knowledge, and becoming a new generation of powerhouses. However, their young lives were forever laid to rest in the land of Versailles, victims of war. Ron took a deep breath, his eyes glistening with tears. He suggested, "Let's observe a moment of silence." Everyone fell silent, paying their respects to the lives lost in the battle against the Burning Legion. Unknowingly, it was already evening and night was beginning to fall. The soldiers of the Scourge Church's allied army were still cleaning up the battlefield. None of the corpses on the battlefield were intact. Some had even been reduced to minced meat, their original appearance unrecognizable. Even the soldiers who had been fighting bravely just a moment ago were vomiting when they saw all this. Ron was holding a military meeting in a large temporary tent. All the powerhouses of the Scourge Church were present. Not long after, a petite black figure pushed open the door and entered. It was Lisa. At this moment, she was wearing a black close-fitting robe, revealing the graceful curves of her body. She entered and bowed calmly. "Lord Young Master, Elder Firth of the Dragons and Chairman Frigga of the Council have sent an invitation to you and First Elder Homelin. He said he hopes that you can come over when it's convenient for you to discuss some matters." Elder of the Dragons? Chairman of the Council? Usually, when these high and mighty figures summon them, everyone would be shocked, but now they didn't feel anything. Ron immediately stood up. "I'll go over right now." Ron and Homelin arrived at the place that Firth of the Council had mentioned. Along the way they encountered countless high-level magical beasts. Most of these magical beasts had decent strength, and many of them were even above the sacred domain. Ron and Homelin glanced at each other, both secretly shocked. They didn't expect the magical beasts of the Noah continent to be so powerful. In terms of overall strength, the humans, elves, and beastmen were no match for these magical beasts. They really didn't know how Firth of the Council had gathered such a powerful army. No wonder the dragons are known as the Lords of Magical Beasts. To be able to subdue so many high-level magical beasts, Firth is really not simple. Ron thought to himself as he walked. Seeing the two of them walking over, the magical beasts roared, but when they saw that it was Ron and Homelin, they quickly wilted and growled a few times to show their respect. Ron and Homelin arrived in front of a huge house. This couldn't even be called a house. Due to the destruction caused by the war, there wasn't a single intact house in the entire Versailles city. Firth had the magical beasts use huge stones to build this place, turning it into a temporary command post for the Allied forces. As soon as Ron and Homelin entered, dozens of gazes immediately focused on them. These gazes were filled with intense envy, jealousy, and a trace of fear. Under the guidance of a high elf, Ron came to his seat, which was slightly to the left of the center. He sat next to Firth. He looked around and found that all the senators and most of the councillors had already arrived. The orc holy wizard Morin, who represented the orcs, was also seated. She was sitting in Strength's seat. Seeing Ron sit down, Firth coughed. "All right, everyone is here. Let's start the meeting." This meeting of the strongest alliance in the continent of Noah had finally begun. After defeating the Burning Legion in Versailles City, the Allied forces had reached a consensus for the first time. However, in the following meeting, there were differences in opinion. "I wonder what Your Highness Ron thinks of our next move?" After Firth finished speaking, he threw the question to Ron. Everyone in the room focused their attention on him. Ron smiled and said without hesitation, "Of course we're going to continue forward and kill our way to Quebec City. Everyone already knows what happened, so I have nothing to say." As soon as Ron finished speaking, everyone was shocked. Some of them might have thought of the result, but they didn't expect Ron to be so straightforward. "Haha, continue forward. Ron, you make it sound so easy. That Quebec City has such terrifying power, so powerful that it's invincible. Do you want us to throw our lives away?" At this moment, a loud voice sounded. Ron looked over and saw an old man with white eyebrows and beard. From the fluctuations of his aura, there was no doubt that he was a magical beast. Frigga immediately introduced, "This is a senator of the Magical Beast clan, Lord D. Luo of the Lion and Phoenix clans." Lion and Phoenix clans? Ron remembered there was a big guy with God Realm strength that appeared on the battlefield. He had the face of a lion, a human body covered in long fur, and a pair of red feathered wings on his back. He was very powerful, but he didn't expect it to be him. Magical beasts rarely transformed into their true forms, and the Lion Man Fong Di Luo was no exception, so Ron had never seen him before. After the Lion Man Fong Di Luo finished speaking, the room fell silent. After all, his words represented everyone's thoughts. The terrifying power from Quebec City was too strong, strong enough to dominate everything. Everyone's strength was as small as an ant in his eyes. Ron also understood this point. Even if he was a mid-level God Realm Master, in front of that terrifying power, he was just a slightly bigger ant. Comparing their strengths, they weren't even on the same level. Ron was about to speak when a gloomy voice sounded from the corner. "Humph! According to what you said, we can only wait for death here? After the Sovereign of Hell Sauron revives, do you think he'll let us go? It's only a matter of time before we die." The one who spoke was Homelin. When Ron was being scolded, he was the first to stand up and express his support. The Lion Man Fong Di Luo chuckled. "The one who dies isn't you, of course it doesn't matter. What I'm afraid of is someone tricking others into charging forward, while they hide behind others and enjoy the fruits of victory. You humans, haven't you always been like this?" Despite Homelin's self-restraint, he was still angered to the point his neck turned red. However, he had to admit that 100,000 years ago, there were indeed some humans who did this. "Let me say a few words." Ron waved his hand, signaling Grandpa Homelin to calm down. He stood up, looking around at everyone with a determined gaze. "I understand everyone's doubts. That's right, the terrifying power from Quebec City does make people cower. That power comes from a powerhouse in the main plane of hell, known as the Sovereign of Hell, Sauron. However, he's been dead for a long time now, and the magic array created by Quebec City, using the blood and souls of countless creatures, is to revive him." Ron briefly explained the situation. He waved his hand and stretched out 3 fingers. "The current situation is very serious. 6 days. Only 6 days left, and the powerful Sovereign of Hell will be revived in the Noah continent. The consequences are chilling just thinking about it, but fortunately, he hasn't really revived yet. We still have time to stop all this. Why don't we do it? Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we can stop all this. 7 days. That's enough." The burning legion that once swept through the entire Noah continent was an extremely terrifying existence, but now their main force has been defeated by us. What's there to be afraid of? I believe we can do it. The power of the Sovereign of Hell, Sauron, is indeed terrifying. But what's there to be afraid of about a dead corpse? Ron's voice echoed in the simple room. His words had the power to stir people's hearts. The room was silent, but Ron seemed to see despair in those people's eyes. In their eyes there was something called hope. "Kill them!" someone yelled. "Attack Quebec, stop the Burning Legion's plan, chase away the invaders. Victory belongs to us." Ron's words were extremely persuasive. Everyone's fighting spirit burned fiercely at this moment. They stood up one after another, expressing their desire to fight to the death with the Burning Legion. The chief elven priestess Undine sat in her seat, not saying a word. She looked at Ron with a hint of approval. Firth and Frigga looked at each other and sighed silently. "Quiet down. Quiet down." Ron waved his hand to signal everyone to quiet down. At this time, his gaze fell on the Lion Man Fengdi Luo and said with a smile, "I understand Lord Fengdi Luo's worries, but we are not the Holy See from 100,000 years ago. This time, our Scourge Church will be the vanguard. Of course, this is only my decision." Ron looked around. Everyone who met his gaze couldn't help but lower their heads. Chapter 726. Clang! The wine glass in Sophia's hand fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. In front of her, the Cthulhu King Ravens was kneeling miserably on the ground, begging for forgiveness. At this moment, he had long lost his former prestige. "What? You said, the Battle of Versailles was lost? The Burning Legion was annihilated?" Sophia's eyes widened, shock written all over her face. "Yes, that mid-level God Realm necromancer was too powerful. We were no match for him." Cough, cough. before Ravens could finish his sentence, he started coughing violently. Large mouthfuls of blood flowed down the corner of his mouth. Sophia's body trembled violently when she heard this. At this moment she was truly afraid. Xeric died in battle, Ravens was defeated, and Ron destroyed the Burning Legion's hell creatures. Without anyone noticing, the Burning Legion's army on the Noah mainland had been wiped out by more than half. Only now did Sophia realize that their current strength on the Noah mainland wasn't enough to start another war. The worst thing was that the native army was marching towards Quebec City with the lingering momentum of their victory. If they were to kill their way here, Sophia couldn't help but shudder at this thought. Could it be those natives have seen through our plan? If that's the case, then we're in trouble. It was said that the necromancer wasn't even 30 years old. A mid-level god realm expert at 30 years old, just the thought of it was terrifying. No, we definitely can't let them ruin Father's resurrection plan. Sophia slowly raised her head, determination shining in her eyes. No matter what, we have to stop them. Even if we have to sacrifice all the troops on the Noah mainland, we have to resurrect Father. Sophia made up her mind. She quickly calmed down and spoke with her head held high. Her voice was emotionless. How much strength do we have left on the Noah mainland? Excluding the soldiers who died in battle, we have about 300,000 to 400,000 soldiers from the remaining troops stationed in various places, but they're all elite troops. Ravens was familiar with the military's affairs, so he calculated and reported. 300,000 to 400,000. 300,000 to 400,000. I think it's enough. Sophia paced back and forth on the spot. She glanced at Ravens and said in a deep voice, "How many days until Father's resurrection?" According to Mr. Longinu, there are still 6 days left. 6 days. There are still 6 days left. For the first time, Sophia felt that 6 days were so long. If she could, she wouldn't want to wait for even a day. Can't we stop it temporarily? Sophia muttered to herself. Ravens shook his head. I don't think so. If that's the case, Lord Sauron's soul will be seriously injured. Sophia was silent for a long time. How about we ask for help from the main plane? Ravens said softly as he carefully observed Sophia's expression. To be honest, he didn't want to ask for help from that side, but that guy who practiced necromancy was too terrifying. He had no choice but to prepare for the worst. If possible, Ravens would never want to go against that guy. No. Sophia shook her head and rejected Ravens' proposal. If it were a few days ago, it would have been possible, but now. Sophia sighed. Recently, I don't know what's wrong with the city amongst the clouds. They suddenly mobilized a large number of troops to attack our territory on a large scale. Our legion also launched a counterattack, and the battle was in a stalemate for a while. At present, our main forces are stalled, and even the plan for the Western Front has to be suspended. I think there shouldn't be any forces that can support us. City amongst the clouds? Ravens was stunned. You mean, the Legion of Holy Angels? Yes. Sophia nodded helplessly. Maybe our actions in the Noah continent have alerted them. Ravens smiled bitterly. In that case, we can only rely on ourselves for the matters in the Noah continent. Sophia thought quickly and took a deep breath. No matter what, we can't let these natives step into the city. 6 days. Just 6 days will be enough. Sophia clenched her fists tightly, and a ferocious look appeared on her pretty face. When my father is resurrected, these people, I will definitely die without a burial place. At night, the entire Quebec City was glowing with red light. Dense dark clouds covered the entire sky above the city, and below, flames flickered, appearing and disappearing in the night. Looking from afar, the entire city was like a huge furnace that was in operation. The power of the magic array was extremely abundant, and from time to time, there would be 1 or 2 screams, which seemed strange in the gloomy and cold night. The black magician Longinu was still dancing as if he was dancing, and his mouth was speaking in a vague language. The blood water in the blood pool gradually took shape. The blood water was churning and bubbling like boiling magma. The surrounding temperature was extremely hot, as if one was in a sea of fire. Longinu's face was full of sweat. Due to the constant casting of spells, he was on the verge of collapse, but his eyes were shining with excitement. At this moment, there was a sudden throbbing in the space around the blood pool. Then, the whole earth began to tremble, as if a terrifying behemoth had turned over. A powerful aura that made one's heart palpitate penetrated the space and filled the entire city in an instant. This aura contained a fierce killing intent, like a sharp sword soaring into the sky. At this moment, the water in the blood pool suddenly churned, making a huge roar. What's going on? Is it an earthquake? Princess Sophia, who was sleeping in the room, was awakened. She jumped out of bed and walked quickly to the windowsill. She quietly looked at the distant sky, and her eyes gradually became pleasantly surprised. This is Father's aura. At this moment, Sophia's face was full of excitement. She clenched her fists tightly, and her body couldn't help but tremble. Did Father resurrect in advance? Sophia couldn't hold back the ecstasy in her heart. She fiercely gritted her teeth, and with a bang, her body disappeared in an instant. The powerful aura of destruction shook the surroundings, and in the destructive power that contained a strong killing intent, there was a trace of the divine power of destruction. The divine power of destruction revealed the will of a god. For a moment, all the creatures in the entire Quebec City trembled in the face of this terrifying power. Boom! The earth quaked and the mountains shook. At this moment, a hand suddenly stretched out from the center of the blood pool. It was a gigantic hand the size of a room. Its skin was pitch black and covered in cyan. It pierced through the blood pool and slowly reached out, bringing with it a terrifying divine aura. Then, a head the size of a small mountain appeared. It was a gigantic head with 10 pairs of sword-like horns on its head. Its monster-like face was filled with terror and malevolence. Its mouth was wide open, revealing a row of deep teeth. The headless corpse of a god that was the size of a human had turned into a giant. He was the king of hell, Sauron. At this moment, he had opened his terrifying eyes, and a large amount of flames emerged from his body. Even his eyes had turned blood-red. His left hand, which was covered in blood, was pressed on the ground, leaving a shocking bloodstain. Ha! Sauron's mouth made a vague sound. The terrifying destructive power made the earth tremble, and the sky and earth changed color. That's right, it's Father's aura. Princess Sophia, who had just arrived, stood on the city wall beside the blood pool. Her eyes were shining with excitement, and the joints of her fingers were cracking. Is Father going to resurrect in advance? Looking at Sauron, who was covered in flames, Sophia couldn't help but think of a possibility. This news was so important to her that she couldn't help but take a step forward and shout excitedly. Father! Father, is that you? It's me. I'm Sophia. Be careful. Before Sophia could finish her words, Raven's warning sounded in her ears. She looked up and was startled. Sauron's huge body stood up, opened his big fan-like hand, and slapped her fiercely. Boom! The huge palm slapped on the city wall, and a powerful destructive power broke out. In front of that terrifying power, the hard city wall was as fragile as paper and was smashed like tofu. Gravel splashed everywhere, and flames soared into the sky. The place that was hit by the huge palm was scorched black. The burning black flame corroded the city wall, making sizzling sounds. Princess Sophia, are you okay? At the critical moment, ravens rushed over and pushed her away. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. I'm fine. Princess Sophia stood up, patted the dust off her body, glanced at Ravens, and nodded. Ravens also stood up. Your Royal Highness, in fact, Lord Sauron hasn't fully woken up yet. His damaged soul hasn't recovered, and his strength has only recovered a part, so he can't recognize you now. I know. I was too impatient. Sophia looked at her father's huge figure and sighed faintly. If father's strength was fully restored, how could I still be alive? At this time, the frequency of Longinus's dance increased a little. No one knew what he shouted, but the out-of-control giant Soren slowly calmed down. With a low roar, his huge body slowly sank into the blood pool. Quebec City regained its tranquility. The terrifying power that shook the sky and the powerful black flames disappeared without a trace in an instant, as if nothing had happened. Sophia watched her father's body slowly sink, and her eyes revealed a fanatical look, as well as a faint trace of attachment. She was reluctant to leave for a long time. Your Royal Highness, please wait for a few days. I believe Mr. Longinu won't disappoint your Royal Highness. Ravens lowered his head and bowed. His posture was as respectful as ever. In the night, on the sword-like cliff, two figures stood side by side, looking into the distance with dignified expressions. Ron, did you feel it? That powerful force. The High Priestess of the Elves, the powerhouse of the realm of the gods, and the god of nature, Undine, said calmly. At this moment, she was wearing an aquamarine elven robe, and the embroidery made her look particularly exquisite. After the meeting, Undine asked Ron to talk alone. The two talked for a long time. Other than Aurora, the two talked most about the military operation of the allied forces of all races on the continent of Noah. At this moment, an extremely terrifying destructive force came from the direction of Quebec City, causing the weather to change and interrupting the two's conversation. Yes, I felt it too. Ron nodded. Are you confident? Undine asked. Ron nodded, then shook his head. No, I only know that we must not let this terrifying guy come back to life. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. Undine pondered for a moment, then nodded. We elves have always been peace-loving, but that doesn't mean that we're afraid of death. Although the road ahead is full of thorns, we won't retreat. Undine's words were powerful, expressing her support for Ron's decision to enter Quebec City. I don't know why, but I keep feeling that the aura of this force is a little familiar. Is it my imagination? Or... Before leaving, Ron turned back to look in the direction of Quebec City. He thought silently, and the doubt on his face deepened. No pop-ups, pure text. Chapter 727. Updated. 2013-11-23. Early the next morning, the Noah continent's allied army immediately set out for Quebec City. Under the leadership of Ron, who was a master of the divine realm, countless hellish creatures were killed along the way, and the allied army achieved glorious victory after glorious victory. The Noah continent's allied army slaughtered their way to Quebec City as if they were crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The allied army's morale was high, and they were unstoppable. The Burning Legion, on the other hand, had lost their fighting spirit and were panic-stricken. Bad news after bad news reached Princess Sophia's command room. She was already numb to it, and couldn't even get angry. She wanted to urge Longinu to hurry up, but she didn't dare interrupt his spellcasting, so she could only sit there anxiously. The Noah continent's allied army had already reached Quebec City. After 3 hours of short rest, the Scourge Church's undead army took the lead in attacking Quebec City. Necromancers, get ready, summon. Lisa, the leader of the Scourge Church's necromancers, gave the order, and hundreds of necromancers simultaneously cast their summoning skills. Car, the black soil hardened, and countless skeletons crawled out from the ground. Their ghastly white skulls bared their fangs, and they held crude weapons in their hands. They were as densely packed as ants. Among the sea of skeletons, tall figures could be seen from time to time. These figures were several times larger than the skeletons, but they were black knights in heavy armor. Black knights were also a type of skeleton. There was another type of skeleton that only wore a tattered magic robe and held a small magic staff in their hands. They didn't have a strong defense, and didn't have powerful offensive skills. They only knew how to cast magic. They were the skeleton mages. Sasha's expression was grave and stern. She stood in the middle of a group of students in her black robe, like a goddess. Ready. Release! She pointed her bone staff forward, and with a delicate shout, the skeleton mages beside her moved their skinny hands, and a powerful magic was instantly released, blasting towards Quebec City. Boom! 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 The hundreds of skeletal magi summoned by the necromancers of the Calamity Academy also began to roar. Magic rained down on the city walls of Quebec, creating huge explosions. Countless low-level spells landed on the city walls, causing the earth to tremble. The sturdy city wall began to show signs of loosening. At the same time, the Burning Legion also began their counterattack. With the casting of the Burning Fire Elves, who had the strength of the Sacred Domain, the large-scale fire spell, Heavenly Meteor Fall, was cast in an instant. A large red cloud appeared in the sky, and in an instant, countless burning meteorites fell from the sky. Boom, 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 those meteors had an extremely strong impact, and when they crashed into the ground, sparks flew everywhere. The scorching temperature was enough to vaporize the skeleton warriors on the spot. The necromancers summoned bone shields to block, but there were also casualties. The necromancers immediately cast healing spells, and the 10 Victories stone statues that recovered life force also began to operate at a crazy speed. It was a soul-stirring magic battle. Both sides bombarded each other with spells. Finally, the top of Quebec City loosened a little, and then it began to collapse. "It's time attack!" Vivian shouted. Her left hand flashed, and a white jade-like magic staff appeared in her hand. She muttered under her breath, and as she chanted in a low voice, a huge abyss skeletal dragon flapped its wings and floated in the air. The abyss skeletal dragon flapped its wings, and a gust of wind blew. It carried Vivian and rushed toward Quebec City. Countless blood-red skull flags were erected, carrying a strong murderous aura. The battlefield below Quebec City had already turned into a sea of blood. A death knight in heavy armor raised the longsword in his hand high. It shone under the scorching sun, and he shouted loudly, "Students, it's time to perform meritorious deeds. Let the beautiful flowers of death bloom on the battlefield." Swoosh! Tens of thousands of warriors also raised their swords high. "For the glory of the catastrophe, kill!" Death Knight Class 1. Charge, Warrior Class 3 follow. Countless Death Knights on skeletal horses charged out like a whirlwind. They were like an unstoppable flood of steel, and all obstacles in their way would be crushed into powder. A young man in a colorful robe stood up. His face was as pale as a corpse's, and he had a demonic look on his face. He waved his hand, and a large group of zombies stood up shakily, approaching Quebec City step by step. Necromancy was the most unpopular profession in the Scourge Church. There were only 2 classes of 70 people. As the proud disciple of the necromancer King Gusi, the young man already had the strength of a great necromancer. He had mastered professional skills such as corpse resurrection, corpse explosion, and zombie refinement. 10 stone statues, meat grinders, gargoyles, abominations, ghouls, and other combat machines and undead creatures formed an army, launching wave after wave of attacks on Quebec City. Ron kept his promise. With the Scourge Church's undead army as the main force, they attacked Quebec City with all their might. This was the Scourge Church's all-in war. At this moment, the Undercity was already an empty city. They had squeezed out all their strength, and even the undead profession that had only joined the Scourge Church for a few days had been dragged into the battlefield. At this moment, Ron was standing on a protruding rock, his face expressionless. Through the ghosts in the sky, he quietly observed the battlefield. His gaze swept across Quebec City, which was shrouded in dark clouds, and his frown deepened. A pair of slender hands gently held onto Ron's arm. Her beautiful face was full of worry. It was Kadena. At this moment, her belly was slightly bulging, and her blue magic robe seemed a little tight. Ron glanced at Kadena, smiled, and hugged her slender waist. "You're pregnant. Don't participate in the battle." Kadena softly agreed. She carefully looked at Ron and asked with concern, "Ron, you look like you have a lot on your mind. What are you worried about?" Ron cast his pitch-black eyes into the distance and sighed softly. "Kadena, do you remember that I once told you that I once refined a headless corpse to fight against the Holy See?" Kadena nodded lightly. "I remember. But didn't you say that this mysterious headless corpse disappeared after the battle with the Pope?" "Indeed. At that time, I couldn't feel the slightest bit of its aura. I also thought that it had disappeared, or was destroyed by the Holy See. But—" Ron's expression became serious. He pointed a finger in the direction of Quebec City. "I can feel its existence now. Moreover, I suspect that this headless corpse is the king of hell that the Burning Legion wants to resurrect, Sauron." "What?" Kadena turned pale with fright. She grabbed Ron's arm tightly. "Ron, you're saying it's true?" Ron looked at her and nodded lightly, then looked into the distance. When Ron had refined the headless corpse, he had already sensed the power of the headless corpse. However, he didn't expect that this headless corpse's origin would be so great. The destructive god force that soared into the sky was enough to make Ron, a mid-level god realm master, shudder. Fortunately, this terrifying demon king had yet to truly resurrect. Although it had a powerful body, it was nothing more than an empty shell. "No matter what, I must stop it from resurrecting." Ron took a deep breath and clenched his fists, secretly making up his mind. Quick update: no pop-up, pure text. Chapter 728. Roar! An angry roar resounded through the sky, and a powerful frost aura descended. A huge head pierced through the clouds, flapping its wings. Frost WRM, the strongest undead creature in the legends, possessed unparalleled power. When more than 10 Frost WRMs appeared in the sky, all the Scourge Church's believers cheered. The strongest among them, the strongest person on the continent of Noah, the powerful divine necromancer Ron, had finally made his move. At this moment, Ron gently embraced Kadena and kissed her smooth, jade-like cheek. "I'm going, baby. Take care." Kadena softly moaned, limp in Ron's arms, unwilling to get up. She tiptoed and kissed the corner of Ron's mouth. "You have to take care too," Ron smiled, and his expression immediately returned to its grave and stern state. His black robe fluttered, and his figure turned into a black fog, disappearing in an instant. Kadena quietly stood where she had been, smiling sweetly. Her hand gently stroked her slightly bulging belly. "Ron, you must come back. For our child." At this moment, Ron had already appeared on the head of one of the Frost WRMs. He slightly waved his hand, and more than 10 Frost WRMs roared in unison, opening their mouths to spit out a cold dragon breath. "GG. Not good, quickly dodge." The little demons lost their heads out of fear. They flapped the small wings on their backs, wanting to escape. But in the next moment their figures stopped. A powerful, suffocating chill descended from the sky like a cold current, instantly freezing the entire city. In an instant, time seemed to have stopped. The earth was covered in a layer of frost, and the sturdy city of Quebec had turned into a world of ice and snow. The hell creatures that had been alive and kicking on the city had turned into ice sculptures in an instant. Everyone was stunned, and the entire battlefield was silent. The combined attack of more than 10 Frost WRMs was actually so terrifying. "Ron has also made his move. It should be our turn now," the High Priestess of the Elves, Undine, muttered to herself. She waved her hand at the elven army behind her. It was a signal to attack. After the undead army began to attack, the elven army also moved. The army of hundreds of thousands of high elves did not want to be left behind. Magic attacks rained down on the city wall like a storm, blasting the frozen hell creatures into pieces. The ice was mixed with blood and internal organs, and the city wall was filled with the nauseating smell of blood. Before engaging in close combat, a round of long-range bombardment had become the norm in war. The elves were no exception. After a round of magic, arrow rain, and moonblade attack, the melee elves also began to charge. The Blood Elf Knights, Druids, and Huntresses were charging at the front. Behind them were countless elemental spellcasters and nature spellcasters. In the sky, the archers riding hippogriffs shot down sharp arrows, reaping the lives of their enemies as if they were breaking twigs. Like Ron, High Priestess Undine also participated in the battle. Her green dress swayed gently, and the shadows of her slender hands appeared. Her eyes turned green. Boom! Boom! In the forest behind the elven army, large patches of trees fell. Soon, withered tree warriors walked out of the forest step by step. They were close to 9 meters tall, and stood there like giants. They bent down and grabbed a huge rock from the ground. With a casual swing, they threw the rock onto the city wall, smashing the hell creatures on the city wall into pieces. The withered tree warriors threw the rock as they strode forward, quickly approaching the city wall. They raised a huge metal head covered in thorns and smashed it down on a troll. The troll wanted to resist, but he found that he couldn't move his body. Countless roots had extended from under his feet, firmly entangling him like the tentacles of an octopus. No. Don't! The troll opened his eyes wide in fear, watching as the fist that was as big as a casserole came crashing down on him with a strong defense, powerful attack, and a heaven-defying skill like entanglement of roots. The withered tree warriors had almost no weaknesses other than being a little slow. Undine summoned hundreds of withered tree warriors to assist in the battle. The appearance of these giants became the nightmare of all hell creatures. At this moment, the magical beast army also moved. The dense horde of magical beasts attacked Quebec City with all their might under the cover of Firth and the fairy dragon, who was known as an all-round magical tutor. The long-awaited decisive battle had finally begun. A death overture with the Scourge Church as the main character had finally begun a moving movement. Kill. 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 In this fierce battle, both sides had no way out. Taking a step forward meant death, and taking a step back meant falling into the abyss. In this final moment, the hell creatures were also riled up. They roared and howled, launching wave after wave of counterattacks against the allied forces of the Noah continent. There were a few times when they chased out the allied forces that had already charged into Quebec City. The remaining demons were also pushed out. They braced themselves and chose opponents to fight with, but no one dared to cause trouble for Ron. Ron's frost dragons had already charged into the city. They stopped on a tall building, constantly roaring and spitting out dragon breath with extremely strong frost energy. However, there was always one place that none of the frost dragons or even the undead creatures dared to approach. That was the blood pool in the center of Quebec City. It was shrouded in a red cloud, and the surrounding temperature was as hot as a furnace. The rising flames made it seem unreal. Ron also entered Quebec City first. He wasn't interested in the ordinary demons at all. His target was the headless corpse in the center of the blood pool. The aura of the divine power of destruction is getting stronger. Is he about to wake up? Ron approached the blood pool in the center of the city. With every step he took, he felt the pressure of Qianjun. His forehead was already covered in cold sweat. Pring bang! A small flame appeared silently. Ron tilted his head and avoided the attack of the flame. However, a small part of his hair was burnt, and a burnt smell wafted out. What? At this moment Ron's heart shook. The small flame was emitted by the person in the center of the blood pool. It seemed angry, but also like a warning. The divine power of destruction contained the will of a god. As if it had a consciousness, it prevented Ron from approaching. Impossible. He has already regained his basic consciousness? Thinking of this, Ron's limbs turned cold. The powerful divine power in the center of the blood pool made even him, a mid-level god realm master, shudder. No, I can't be afraid. I can't, Ron clenched his teeth, forcibly suppressing the fear that came from the bottom of his heart. His hands and body trembled involuntarily. For the countless creatures of the Noah continent, for the Scourge Church, for the Lich King's expectations, I can't retreat. In a trance, the image of the Lich King who had suddenly appeared in the Snow Orchid continent appeared in Ron's mind. That dignified, concerned, and exasperated look in his eyes made his heart ache. Soul ignition. Ron coldly shouted and activated soul ignition. He clenched his teeth and took another step forward. The flames roared even more fiercely, indicating that the king in the center of the blood pool was dissatisfied with him. The divine power was released without restraint, and the surrounding space seemed to freeze. Haha, Sauron, you're just a defeated opponent of the Lich King. Now you're just a corpse. Why should I be afraid of you? Ron took another step forward, his eyes filled with intense coldness. Ron, inherit the will of the Lich King. I vow to stop you from being resurrected. Ron obtained the information he wanted from the soul of the slain demon. He already knew that this Sauron was one of the demon gods killed by the Lich King Heremos 100,000 years ago. After the Lich King killed Sauron, he destroyed his soul and chopped off his head, sealing it away from his body. The head was sealed in Hell, while the body was sealed in Omros. For some reason, this headless corpse was brought to the Noah continent by someone in the basement of the Balarax Academy, until Ron found it. After knowing the origins of the headless corpse, Ron was even more determined to destroy it. The moment this king of Hell awakened, the entire Noah continent would be destroyed. The hatred that had been accumulated for 100,000 years was like the raging flames of hell, enough to turn the entire world to ashes. Pata, Ron's body trembled as he took another step forward. At this moment, there was a boom as a frost dragon screamed and shattered like a piece of ice. The fall of the frost dragon caused everyone in the Scourge Church to panic. Who had the strength to kill a frost dragon? Killing a frost dragon did not affect Ron at all. He was only curious about the person who came. He raised his head slightly and smiled. Who else could it be but ravens? In the sky, ravens stared at Ron, who was confronting him. His expression was extremely furious, and his blood-red eyes seemed to burst into flames. Raising the long sword in his hand slightly, Ravens coldly shouted, "Ron, I order you to leave immediately. Otherwise, the Noah continent will suffer the wrath of the Burning Legion. You have to understand. The strength of the Burning Legion that you've seen now is only the tip of the iceberg." Ron only smiled at Raven's threat. So what? If the Burning Legion is really so powerful, I'm afraid they would have already killed their way over, right? Do they still need you to threaten me? Could it be that the resurrection of Commander Sauron is really not that important? Raven's eyes widened in horror as if he had seen a ghost. You know everything? Of course, Ron would not say that he got the information from the soul of the dead demon. He waved the bone staff in his hand. There's nothing to say, right? In that case, it's time for you to die. Boom! A powerful soul power erupted from Ron's body. He smiled softly and raised his other hand slightly. A small black thread jumped cheerfully in his hand. That's the divine power of death? Impossible. How do you have divine power? Ravens cried out in horror. At this time, he found that his body had been firmly locked by the other party's aura and could no longer escape. The feeling of death shrouded Raven's heart. In an instant, his body fell into an ice cellar. Ron had raised the staff of death, high and vowed to take his life. Go to hell. Ron's face was extremely cold. Without thinking, he threw out the spear of death. Raven's body had been locked, and he was motionless. Facing the whistling spear of death, His only choice was to close his eyes. Boom! The spear of death seemed to have hit a hard wall and bounced back. The divine power of death filled half the sky in an instant, forming a huge black ball of light in the sky. In the void there were also cracks. Princess Sophia? Raven's eyes widened as he looked at the beautiful figure in front of him in disbelief. Who could it be if not Princess Sophia? At the critical moment, Sophia stepped forward and blocked in front of Raven's. In order to deal with Ron's divine power of death, she also consumed a trace of destruction divine power. At the level of mid-level God realm, using the divine power of death was nothing new. Ron's divine power of death came from the Soul Ring, while Sophia's destruction divine power came from the Hell-Burning Legion's Grand Commander Thor. Death and destruction were both divine power laws. It was difficult to distinguish between them. Everything depended on the user's mastery of the laws. Ron and Sophia exchanged blows. For some reason, he felt that this power was somewhat familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. He raised his head slightly and happened to meet Sophia's gaze. Both of them were stunned. "It's you!" The two of them shouted in unison. This time, it was Raven's turn to be stunned. Could it be that the two of them knew each other? Humph, Sophia gritted her teeth. That's right, she also knew this guy in front of her. It was the necromancer who destroyed one of her power seeds in the Snow Orchid continent. Who would have thought that enemies would meet on a narrow road? The two of them actually met again in the Noah continent. That demon seed was not a simple thing. It was fused with the essence of her power. To be able to let Vitala, an ordinary powerhouse of the sacred domain, squeeze into the God realm, one could tell how terrifying it was. So she's the controller of the Naga who turned into a demon in the Snow Orchid continent. No wonder her power is so familiar. Ron frowned and thought silently. So it's you, the guy who destroyed one of my power seeds. Hee, I've been looking for you. I didn't expect you to be here. Now I don't have to run around. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.